The crystal glasses clinked against fine china as my mother set another perfect table for our mandatory Sunday dinner. The Bennett family image had to be maintained, even if some of us, meaning me, weren't living up to expectations. "Emma, darling," my mother called from the dining room, "do try to mention your little website less tonight. Your brother has important news about the company." I smoothed down my simple black dress, bought from my own online boutique, though they didn't know that. At 28, I was the family disappointment, the one who'd walked away from our family's luxury retail empire to start what they called my little internet hobby. The doorbell chimed. My brother Nathan's voice boomed through the foyer, followed by the click of his wife Sophia's designer heels. The golden child had arrived. "There's my successful son," Dad announced, emerging from his study. "How's the expansion going?" Nathan straightened his bespoke suit, probably worth more than what they thought my entire business made in a month. "Closing the deal this week. Bennett Luxury Group is about to become the biggest retail chain in 3 states. If they only knew about the emails I'd received this morning, about the acquisition that would make their expansion look like a corner store opening." "Emma," Sophia air-kissed my cheek, still playing shop online. "How quaint." I took a sip of water, hiding my smile. "Something like that. Speaking of which," Mom interjected, arranging the silverware just so. "Mrs. Harrison mentioned a lovely opening at their corporate office. Perfect for someone with your limited experience." Nathan laughed, the sound echoing through the formal dining room. "Come on, Mom. Emma's too busy being an entrepreneur." "What was it again, sis? Selling secondhand clothes on the internet?" If he only knew about the algorithm I'd developed, the one revolutionizing online retail, the one major companies were desperately trying to acquire, the one that had just made me a billionaire in secret. "Actually, I started, but Dad cut me off. Enough about Emma's hobby. Nathan, tell us more about the expansion. Real business, not this internet nonsense." I thought about the notification I'd received just before dinner. Bennett Luxury Group's stock had dropped another 5% today. Their traditional retail model was bleeding money, but they were too proud to see it. "We're acquiring the Riverside Mall properties," Nathan boasted, cutting into his steak. "Prime real estate. Old money. The kind of customers who'd never buy luxury goods online." I bit back a laugh. The latest data from my platform showed that 70% of luxury purchases were now happening digitally. But why spoil their illusions? "That's wonderful, dear," Mom beamed. "Unlike some people, you understand the importance of maintaining our family's reputation." My phone buzzed quietly in my lap. A message from my CFO. "Final papers signed. Acquisition complete. You now own controlling interest in Premier Capital." Premier Capital, the bank financing Nathan's expansion. The bank that was about to call in some very uncomfortable loans. "Emma could learn a lot from you," Dad continued, swirling his expensive bourbon. "Real business is about relationships, handshakes, looking people in the eye, not hiding behind a computer screen." Speaking of relationships, Sophia chimed in. "Bradley Matthews is single again. He's a junior partner at Premier Capital now. Perfect for someone who needs direction." I smiled, thinking of the email I'd received from Bradley last week, begging for a meeting with the mysterious CEO of Nova Digital, my company's public face. He had no idea he was trying to pitch to the same woman he dismissed as not corporate material 3 years ago. "I'm quite happy with my current direction," I said quietly. Nathan snorted. "What direction?" "Your little website barely makes enough to pay rent." Meanwhile, Bennett Luxury is about to announce the biggest expansion in our history. I checked my watch. In exactly 12 hours, Premier Capital would announce a complete audit of all major loans, including the ones Nathan had taken out against inflated property values. How are the mall properties performing? I asked innocently. I heard traditional retail was struggling this quarter. That's because people like you are ruining real shopping, Mom sighed. All this online nonsense. No class, no sophistication. My phone buzzed again. Another message from my CFO. Premier Capital board meeting moved to tomorrow morning. They found the discrepancies. The future is digital, I said, more to myself than them. Either adapt or become obsolete. Listen to her? Nathan laughed. Playing Steve Jobs while the adults run real businesses. Tell me, sis, how many people does your little website employ? 2, 3? Try 15,000 across 3 continents. But they'd learn that soon enough. I do all right, I replied softly. Dad stood, raising his glass. To Bennett Luxury Group's expansion. To real success, built the right way. They all clinked glasses, not noticing that I hadn't raised mine. They never noticed much about me anymore. That was about to change. Oh, Nathan added, almost forgot. We're using your old college fund to secure the expansion loans. Not like you're using it for anything important. I set down my water glass carefully. Interesting choice. If they'd bothered to check, they'd have known that college fund had been empty for months. I'd withdrawn it to buy my first shares of Premier Capital, starting the chain of events that would unfold tomorrow. Don't worry, dear. Mom patted my hand. There's always that job at Harrison's. Much more suitable than this online business fantasy. I stood, gathering my things. I should go. Early meeting tomorrow. With what? Your web designer? Nathan smirked. Something like that. I smiled. By the way, Nathan, when was the last time you reviewed those loan documents from Premier Capital? Thoroughly, I mean. His smirk faltered slightly. What's that supposed to mean? Nothing. I shouldered my bag. Vintage Herman's, worth more than his car. Just something to think about before tomorrow's board meeting. As I walked out, I heard Mom ask, "What board meeting?" But I was already closing the door, smiling as my driver opened the car door. Tomorrow would be interesting indeed. The next morning, I sat in my real office, the entire top floor of the Nova Digital headquarters downtown. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a perfect view of the Bennett Luxury Group building across the street, where my family's empire was about to crumble. Premier Capital's board meeting starts in 10 minutes, my assistant Kate informed me, setting down my morning coffee. Nathan Bennett just arrived. He looks anxious. I pulled up the live security feed on my tablet. My brother, his perfect suit slightly rumpled, was pacing the Premier Capital lobby. No swagger today, no smirk. Just the growing realization that something was very wrong. The audit reports? I asked. Kate handed me a folder. Complete. The forensic accountants found everything. Inflated property valuations, hidden debts, creative accounting, all of it. I smiled, remembering Nathan's boast from last night about real business. Real fraud was more like it. Miss Nova, my CFO Michael appeared in the doorway, using my professional name. The other board members have arrived. Should we begin? I stood, straightening my designer suit. One that cost more than my entire family thought I made in a year. Let's not keep them waiting. The Premier Capital boardroom fell silent as I entered. Nathan, halfway through what appeared to be an impassioned defense, froze mid-sentence. Emma? What are you doing here? This is a private meeting, isn't? I took my seat at the head of the table. As majority shareholder of Premier Capital, I think I have every right to be here. The color drained from his face. Majority? What? I nodded to Michael, who distributed copies of the audit report. Let's talk about Bennett Luxury Group's loan applications, shall we? Specifically, the creative math used to secure them. This is ridiculous, Nathan sputtered. You sell clothes online. You can't possibly. Nova Digital, I cut him off, doesn't just sell clothes. We revolutionized e-commerce. That little website you mocked. It processes more luxury sales in an hour than your stores do in a month. The board members were flipping through the reports, their expressions growing darker with each page. Mr. Bennett, one of them spoke up. These discrepancies are significant. Nathan loosened his tie. There must be some mistake. Our family has been with Premier Capital for generations. Yes, I agreed. Which makes the fraud even more disappointing. Fraud? His voice cracked. Emma, you can't seriously. It's Ms. Nova in this room, I corrected. And yes, fraud. Systematic misrepresentation of assets, manipulation of property valuations, and that's just the beginning. I pulled up the real numbers on the boardroom screens. Bennett Luxury Group's true financial state was displayed in brutal detail: the failing stores, the mounting debts, the desperate attempts to maintain the facade of success. The loans are being called in, I announced. All of them. Bennett Luxury Group has 48 hours to provide full payment or collateral of equal value. That's impossible. Nathan stood, his carefully maintained composure shattering. You'll destroy the company, our family's legacy. The company was already destroying itself, I replied calmly. Refusing to adapt, clinging to outdated models, mocking digital innovation while the world moved online. My phone buzzed, a message from Dad. They must have heard. I ignored it. There is one option, I said, sliding a document across the table. Nova Digital is prepared to acquire Bennett Luxury Group at a very generous discount, considering the circumstances. Nathan grabbed the paper, his hands shaking. This is barely 10% of what we're worth. It's twice what you're actually worth, I corrected. The offer expires in 1 hour. After that, we go public with the audit. You planned this, he whispered. All of it. While we thought you were playing at business. I learned from the best. I smiled. Wasn't it Dad who always said, never let them see you coming? The boardroom door burst open. Dad stood there, looking like he'd aged 10 years since dinner last night. Mom hovered behind him. Her perfect makeup couldn't hide her panic. What have you done? Dad demanded. I stood slowly, enjoying the shift in power. I built something real. Something that will survive in the digital age. Unlike your empire of overpriced retail spaces and outdated thinking. By betraying your family? No. I met his gaze steadily. By saving it from itself. The offer stands. Nova Digital acquires Bennett Luxury Group. We digitize the operation, save what can be saved, and bring the family business into the 21st century. Under your control, Mom said softly. Under competent control, I corrected. The choice is yours. Adapt or collapse. The next week unfolded like a perfectly executed business plan, which, of course, it was. Bennett Luxury Group's stock had been suspended from trading after the audit news leaked. My parents' carefully curated social circle was buzzing with whispers about the family's fall from grace. I sat in what used to be my father's office, now part of Nova Digital's expanding headquarters. The view hadn't changed, but everything else had. The integration teams are ready, Kate reported. And your mother is here. Again. I checked the security feed. Mom stood in the lobby, looking lost without her usual air of superiority. 3 visits in a week, a record for someone who'd spent years pretending my business didn't exist. Send her up. She entered cautiously, taking in the transformed space. Gone were the heavy oak furniture and oil paintings of stern-faced Bennett patriarchs. Instead, smart screens displayed real-time sales data, global logistics maps, and the future of retail. This used to be your grandfather's office, she said softly. And now, it's mine. I gestured to a chair. What can I do for you, Mom? She sat, smoothing her designer dress. Last season's collection, I noticed. The small details that showed how far they'd fallen. Nathan's leaving for London, she announced. Sophia filed for divorce yesterday. Smart woman, I replied. Getting out before the legal proceedings begin. Legal? You're pressing charges against your own brother. I pulled up the complete audit report on my tablet. Fraud is fraud, Mom. The SEC doesn't care about family ties. He could go to prison. He should have thought about that before falsifying loan documents. I met her eyes. Or did you think those creative accounting techniques Dad taught him would never catch up? She flinched. Your father was only trying to protect the family legacy. By committing fraud. By teaching Nathan that rules don't apply to Bennett's. I laughed softly. Some legacy. My phone buzzed. Another message from Dad. Probably another attempt to negotiate better terms for the takeover. I ignored it, just like I'd ignored the last dozen. The country club is talking, Mom said, as if that still mattered. Mrs. Harrison asked if we'd be giving up our membership. Actually, I smiled. Nova Digital just bought the club. We're modernizing it, making it more inclusive. The horror on her face was almost comical, but the traditions are as outdated as Bennett Luxury's business model. I stood, walking to the window. The world changed, Mom. I tried to tell you all for years, but you were too busy mocking my little website to listen. And now you own everything, she whispered. Not everything, just the parts worth saving. My phone lit up with an alert. Nova Digital's stock had just hit another record high. The market loved our acquisition strategy, our technology, our vision for the future. What happens now? Mom asked. I turned back to face her. Now, Bennett Luxury Group becomes a division of Nova Digital. We'll salvage what we can, modernize what works, discard what doesn't. The family name will survive, just not the way you all planned. And your brother. Nathan has 2 choices. Cooperate with the SEC investigation in exchange for leniency, or face the full consequences of his actions. His choice. She stood, suddenly looking very old. We should have listened to you. Yes, I agreed simply. You should have. Your father. He wants to meet. To discuss terms. I smiled. The terms were clear. He can keep his board seat, non-voting, of course, and a modest salary, in exchange for his silence and cooperation. It's killing him, she said, watching you dismantle everything he built. I'm not dismantling it, Mom. I'm evolving it. That little online hobby you all laughed at? It's the future. While you were all clinging to handshakes and corner offices, I was building an empire that will actually last. My phone buzzed again. The integration team needed decisions on which Bennett stores to close first. You should go, I said. The country club's new membership committee meets today. Lots of changes coming. She paused at the door. Will you still come to Sunday dinner? I thought about all those dinners spent being belittled, dismissed, mocked. No, I said finally. But you're welcome to schedule a meeting with my assistant if you'd like to discuss business. After she left, I stood at the window, watching the city that had once belonged to Bennett Luxury Group and now answered to Nova Digital. My empire, built one click at a time while they laughed at my little website. Kate appeared with the afternoon reports. Your father's lawyer called again, and the SEC wants to schedule another interview with Nathan. Schedule them both, I said. And Kate? Send my mother a gift basket. Something from our new luxury online collection. Last season style, of course. She needs to learn about digital shopping somehow. Because success isn't just about proving them wrong. It's about teaching them how right you've been all along. Even if the lesson costs them everything they thought they owned. The Bennett family legacy would survive, just not as they'd imagined it. Instead of handshakes in corner offices, it would thrive in algorithms and innovation. And the daughter they'd dismissed as playing businesswoman, she wasn't playing anymore.
Before I left my apartment in the Boston suburbs, I found myself thinking about what my best friend Samantha had told me. Don't go to Thanksgiving this year. No one in that house is on your side. I thought I understood what she meant. Welcome home, Kelly, my mother said with a smile. But there was no warmth behind it. It felt like she was trying to mimic the expression rather than feeling it. Her eyes didn't quite meet mine, they flicked away, as if looking through me. My father folded his newspaper carefully, looked up, and gave me a silent nod. Nothing more. As if my arrival was nothing out of the ordinary, not something worth reacting to. My sister Catherine was sprawled across the couch, her eyes locked onto her phone screen. She didn't even flinch when I walked into the room, either pretending not to notice me or refusing to acknowledge I was there at all. I held out the box of pumpkin pie with both hands. It was the same pie I baked every year, my own quiet gift to the family. But no one reached for it. In the awkward silence, my mother stood up, took the pie without saying a word, and placed it on the far corner of the table with the gentlest touch, like she was handling something invisible. Dinner began in a strained silence. As I sipped from my glass, I glanced at Catherine. She carried on as if nothing had happened. But I couldn't forget the email I received last month from a man I didn't know. Should I say something now? Maybe there was more to her side of the story. But no matter how many times I tried to convince myself, I couldn't shake his silent desperation from my mind. Pretending to eat, I asked myself quietly. Then I placed my napkin on my lap and took a deep breath. I couldn't stay silent any longer. I need to talk to you all, I said. Everyone looked up. My father furrowed his brow. Catherine let out an annoyed sigh. A man claiming to be Catherine's fiancé reached out to me recently. He says he lent her a large sum of money, and now she's completely ghosted him. Catherine froze mid-motion. The silver spoon slipped from her hand and clinked against the edge of her plate. I could feel the room freeze. My mother went still, staring at me like time had stopped. But her eyes weren't filled with shock, they were filled with guilt. She wanted to deny it, but couldn't. My father leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, and muttered, "And?" The word landed with a dull thud in my chest. For a moment I thought I must have misheard. "And?" I asked softly, but firmly. He looked at me like I was an annoying dat. It's none of your concern. I was speechless for a second. But then the anger and hurt welled up. None of my concern? Do you really think that? I kept my voice steady, but I let the emotion spill. The man who claimed to be Catherine's fiancé even contacted me at my workplace. I had to read that message in the middle of my shift. Do you know how humiliating that was? And on top of that, I already paid back part of the loan for her. Over $10,000. I reached into my bag, pulled out my notebook, and placed a copy of the payment record in the center of the table. Bank transfers, amounts, dates, everything clearly printed. No one moved, except Catherine, who glanced at the papers. But she didn't look rattled. In fact, she smirked slightly as if nothing were wrong. Don't be ridiculous. I never borrowed anything. He gave me that money. He said it was a gift. What a fool got all worked up on his own and then got hurt all by himself. The casual cruelty in her voice made something boil inside me. Catherine, I shouted, not out of anger, out of heartbreak. I wanted to believe in her. I hoped she'd change. But it all came crashing down. Do you even understand what you're doing? This isn't the first time. You've been in trouble over money for months now, borrowing with no plan to repay, hiding it from everyone. I drew another breath, forcing myself to say the next part. I know about the gambling addiction. I saw the accounts, the online casinos. I paid some of those credit card bills. Did you think I wouldn't notice? Catherine shrugged and looked away. No one asked you to. Don't act like I owe you anything. I'm done. My voice was quiet, but it trembled not from rage, but from the pain of breaking away. I wasn't born into this family to clean up after you. The room was completely silent. No one said a word. Only the payment statement on the table spoke truth that now lay bare. Then suddenly, my father slammed his napkin onto the table. You're no longer part of this family. Get out. I was speechless. I had paid more toward this house than anyone else in this family. And now I was being thrown out like this? All you know how to do is hurt Catherine just to feel important. I was trying to protect this family. I cleaned up her messes so none of this would fall on you. That's just self-righteousness, he spat. You're not family anymore. And don't you dare set foot in this house again. My mother said nothing. She just stared into her cold soup. Catherine gave a faint, smug smile. I understand, I said quietly. I stood up, slipped on my coat, and gently picked up the box of pie I had brought. As I opened the front door, I heard my father's low voice behind me. We never counted on you anyway. Samantha's words echoed in my chest. I shouldn't have come. But this time, I felt no regret. Because now I wasn't running away, I was drawing a line. The morning after Thanksgiving, I sat at my computer, having spent the night wide awake. A hot cup of black coffee steamed beside me. On my screen was the mortgage portal I had checked every month for the last 10 years. To make sure payments were on time, to track the loan balance, to monitor any change in interest. I had signed as a co-signer on the mortgage under my parents' names when I was 24. This is your duty as a family member, my father had said. Fresh out of grad school, I pushed myself to live up to their expectations. My sister kept causing problems, and my mother had whispered, "You're the only one I can count on." That was enough to sway me. So I began covering over $2,000 a month in payments. I was never once thanked. Still, I kept paying because we were family, because I believed I couldn't walk away. I was the invisible backbone. When the utilities couldn't be paid, when the car broke down, when Catherine racked up gambling debts, I quietly handled it all behind the scenes. It wasn't about recognition. I just wanted to belong. But somewhere along the way, I became the outsider in my own family. When I asked about the mortgage statements, my father frowned and said, "That's none of your business." When I raised concerns about Catherine's boyfriend, my mother scolded me for being too harsh. Slowly, the Thanksgiving and Christmas invites grew vague. One day, my seat at the table was gone. So was my name from their conversations. The only place I had ever truly believed I belonged, my family had begun to quietly crumble beneath me the moment I started asking for the truth. But last night, when I heard my father's words, something snapped. It felt like a cord I didn't even know I was still holding onto had finally broken. And I realized I didn't even know who I was paying for anymore. I began lining up the documents on my desk. The mortgage contract, payment records, tax documents. Beside them, an email from Samantha, who also happened to be a lawyer, was open on my screen. Don't act on emotion. Act on what's legally sound. You're a co-signer, not the primary borrower. You can request to be released from liability. I've drafted a formal statement you can use. Just fill it in and send it as soon as possible. I took a deep breath and began filling out the attached template. I rewrote it several times, choosing every word carefully. At last, a formal letter was complete. Subject: request for formal release from loan guarantee obligations. I signed it, saved it as a PDF, and uploaded it to the financial institution's online portal. When I pressed the submit button, something stirred inside me. A trace of guilt, maybe? But I looked at the 10 years of payment history. Roughly $240,000. I had carried 80% of that mortgage alone. Was it ever my duty to use that money to cover Catherine's gambling and emotional cons? No. I would no longer carry the weight of other people's choices. "Well done, Kelly," I whispered to myself. No one else might say it, but I would, for myself. That afternoon, my phone rang. It was Samantha. "Did you send it?" "Yes, just now." "You did good. That one action just changed your life. You can rest easy now." I closed my eyes and leaned back in my chair. "It's strange," I murmured. "The weight's supposed to be off my shoulders, but my chest still feels heavy." "That's only natural," Samantha said gently. "You've spent your whole life trying to be the good daughter. Guilt becomes a habit. But realizing that it came from a false sense of duty, that's a huge step." Samantha always knew how to pull me back to reality. She was the only one who truly understood me. And honestly, what happened at Thanksgiving? It was awful. I can't believe your mom just sat there in silence. She's always been like that. She can't stand up to my father. She looked like she understood me, but in the end, she said nothing. "Are you ready for what comes next?" I gave a small nod. "Yes, I've decided. I'm going to fully break away from my family. After I hung up, I pulled up the notification letter I had sent once more. Then I shut down the computer and sank into the living room couch. The only sound in the quiet room was the soft hum of the heater. There had never been warmth in my family's home. But here, in this space I'd built myself, there was. Peace no one could trample. A safety I had created with my own hands. This was home now. As Christmas drew closer, the city of Boston lit up with festive lights. During my commute, I found small comfort in the trees and wreaths glimmering through the windows. But that peace shattered the moment I found the red envelope in my mailbox. It was from my parents' house, sent under my mother's name. I took a deep breath and opened it. Inside was a handwritten Christmas card. But on the back, in small letters, it read, "It looks like the mortgage payment is overdue. December hasn't been paid. The bank contacted us. Please take care of it soon." A bill disguised as a Christmas greeting. I gently folded the letter and placed it back into the envelope, setting it quietly on the table. The cover, adorned with gold and red ribbon, read Merry Christmas, but it felt hollow, cruel even. Like a threat wrapped in holiday cheer. From that day on, the phone started ringing. Blocked numbers. My parents' number. I didn't answer any of them. Instead, messages and notifications began flooding in. On Facebook, my mother had posted something that felt like a public accusation. Helping your family should be second nature. After 10 years of support, to suddenly turn so cold it's heartbreaking. Beneath her words was a firm belief that she was the victim. It was clear she had no interest in acknowledging my pain or the sacrifices I had made. The comments poured in. So sad. What happened to your daughter? I bit my lip. People who didn't know the truth were judging me as ungrateful. But I didn't have the energy to defend myself. I didn't want to give up any more of my time or my emotions. Not long after, an official notice arrived from the bank. 30-day delinquency on mortgage payment. It warned that if the payment remained overdue, the situation would escalate minus 60 days, 90 days, foreclosure. I filed the letter and immediately called Samantha. The notice came just like we expected. Her voice was calm over the phone. Expected. Don't panic, Kelly. Your release from the guarantor contract should already be processed. The system probably hasn't caught up yet. I'll confirm it on my end. But the posts, the emails, they're getting worse. My mom's asking if I plan to just let them lose the house. She's acting like I destroyed everything. You didn't destroy it, Samantha said. It was broken from the start. You were just the one holding it all together. Her words brought tears to my eyes again. But I didn't want to cry. I hadn't come this far to collapse now. I had finally taken control of my life for me. Then, one night, I heard from a college friend. Catherine had been talking about me spreading lies. She's cold. She ran off to save herself. She never really cared about us. I was just her pawn. To protect her own reputation, she had cast me as the villain. The next morning, an anonymous message arrived on Instagram. People like you preaching about helping others? What a joke. My profile still held old photos, carefully curated posts that painted me as a polished, successful woman. But no one could see the struggle behind it, the pain, the sacrifices. And Catherine's sweet words and theatrics had fooled so many. I can't take this anymore. I slammed my laptop shut and collapsed onto the couch. But then my eyes landed on a photo on the wall. Samantha and me, on college graduation day. Behind us was a banner, "The future is yours to choose." Back then, I was still becoming who I am, still figuring it out. But now I think I finally understand what those words meant. The future isn't something you're given. It's something you protect, something you build with your own hands. I took a deep breath and stood up. I wasn't going to live in fear of family messages anymore. This time, it was my turn. The first weekend of the new year, I visited Samantha's office. Tucked into a corner of a Boston townhouse, her law office was a perfect blend of elegance and quiet strength. As the receptionist guided me in, Samantha looked up from a stack of documents and smiled the moment she saw me. "I'm so glad you came. I actually had something I wanted to discuss." I nodded and sank into the chair across from her. Any lingering trace of holiday cheer was long gone. If anything, coming here made my resolve feel tangible for the first time. "At this point, things are escalating," she said. "The online defamation, the false reports to the mortgage lender, were at a stage where we can start taking legal action." She slid a set of papers toward me. "First, we'll send a formal cease and desist letter. It's in your name, and it demands that your father, mother, and Catherine cease all direct or indirect contact immediately." I scanned the document, exhaling slowly. Do we really have to go this far? They see your silence as compliance, Kelly. That's why you have to make your boundaries unmistakably clear. I picked up the pen and signed my name. Kelly Harrison. Just that one signature, yet something shifted inside me. Until now, I'd been fighting to protect others. Now, I was standing for my own dignity. "This next one is a letter to the mortgage company," Samantha continued. "There's a chance your release as guarantor hasn't been fully processed. I'll send this under my name to confirm." Despite the legal pressure mounting around me, I felt something I hadn't in years: calm. Samantha had my back. For so long I'd been alone in my family, but now I had someone standing beside me. "I've also preserved evidence of the online harassment," she added. "The altered posts, the impersonation accounts, the threatening messages, we've archived everything." "Thank you. Really. Kelly, this isn't just a legal battle. It's about reclaiming your life, drawing a line with your own hand. That's what matters most." Her words echoed in me. I wasn't angry at my family. I didn't hate them. I just wanted to finally reclaim my worth. That was all. The following week, Samantha mailed 3 letters by certified post. One to my father, one to my mother, one to Catherine. Each outlined the formal demand to stop harassment, prohibit further financial contact, and acknowledge that I was no longer responsible for any financial obligations tied to them. A few days later, the first reaction came from Catherine. She flooded her Instagram stories with vague posts clearly aimed at me. "Some people are just ice cold, don't deserve to be called family. If all you see is money, you're not someone I want to call my sister." Samantha acted quickly. She submitted the screenshots and reported the posts to the platform. She also issued a written warning that we were prepared to pursue defamation if needed. Shortly after Catherine's account went private, the indirect jabs disappeared. Then came my mother's response. A handwritten letter delivered to my apartment. Catherine has her issues, but do you really have to shut us out? We're family, we can work things out. Don't drag lawyers into this. I sat in silence for a while after reading it. If we could have worked things out, none of this would have happened. I picked up my phone and called Samantha. My mom sent a letter. She's asking me not to use lawyers. Classic move. They don't want outsiders involved in family matters because they want to stay in control. They'll use guilt when truth gets uncomfortable. But Kelly, you've done more than enough. It's time to start living for yourself. I nodded, holding on to her words. From my father there was nothing. But that, too, felt expected. He ruled with silence, escaped through silence. That was his version of parenting. My legal notices had finally drawn the line. Not with emotions, with documents and law. That was the only language that could end a conversation that had never truly begun. I wasn't waiting for anyone's approval anymore. From now on, I would give that approval to myself. One morning in July, I unlocked the door to my new office. A quiet street just outside Boston. A ground floor space that used to be an art gallery. After months of renovation, it was finally ready to open. The sign outside read, Phoenix Financial Freedom. A place for those who, like me, wanted to rebuild their lives from the ashes. And this was the very first step. The phone rang. It was Samantha. It's finally here. Are you nervous? A little. But strangely, I'm not scared. That's how you know this path is truly yours. And Kelly, the person you are now, she can handle anything. I smiled and nodded. The past 6 months had completely rewritten how I saw the world and myself. I used to believe I had to earn love, that my worth was tied to how much my family needed me. I tried to be useful to my father, live up to my mother's expectations, and clean up after Catherine's messes just to hold on to a place in the family. But they never thanked me. All I ever received was silence and the suffocating weight of expectation. Even so, I had finally realized that my worth was not defined by anyone else's needs. Even when it comes to family, if there is no respect, you have the right and the responsibility to reevaluate the relationship. Starting this company wasn't just a business move. It was the redefinition of who I was. Over these past few months, I'd spoken with so many women. A wife forced to carry her ex-husband's debt after divorce. A single mother in her 40s, still financially controlled by her toxic parents. A corporate woman who had sacrificed her career under the crushing weight of family expectation. In their stories, I saw pieces of myself over and over again. And that's why I didn't want to be just a financial planner. I wanted to be someone who helped people draw the line. Because financial freedom is emotional freedom. The ability to choose without being exploited or dependent, that's what I wanted to give others. That afternoon, my first client walked through the door. She was in her early 30s, with faint dark circles under her eyes, a childcare bag on one arm, and a copy of divorce paperwork in the other. I don't even know where to start. She said it through quiet tears. I handed her a tissue, You can start wherever you'd like. Here, you are the subject of the story. My voice surprised even me, steady, calm, and sure. Before, someone else's pain would have crushed me. But not now. I can stand on my own now. That's why I can stand beside someone in pain without being pulled under by it. As dusk settled in, I returned to my desk and began drafting the day's report. Outside the window, the late summer wind rustled the leaves. Just then, a new email arrived on my phone. The sender, my mother. Subject, I just hope you're doing okay. I stared at the screen without touching it. Should I open it? Or maybe I didn't need to anymore. I didn't have an answer right away. But a few minutes later, I quietly archived the message. The past could stay recorded. But I no longer had to be ruled by it. As if affirming that, my eyes fell on a card on my desk emblazoned with my company's logo. Kelly, you made it. The voice belonged to Samantha. She had stopped by in the early evening, holding 2 cups of coffee. Thank you. I just wrapped up. We sat side by side, sipping quietly and looking out the window. So, what do you want to do now? Samantha asked. I thought for a moment, then answered clearly. I want to take back the time and energy I lost to the past and use it to build something for this version of me. That truly was my new beginning. Later, I heard bits and pieces about what happened to the family I once bent over backward for. Quietly, but undeniably, they had started to fall apart. My parents, unable to get by on pension alone, fell deeper into debt, struggling with unpaid mortgage balances and living expenses. Eventually, overdue property taxes caught up with them, and they were forced to let go of the old, worn house they'd lived in for decades. My father, who once prided himself on needing no one, was now consumed by repayment schedules and a life stripped to bare essentials. And Catherine, she was facing multiple lawsuits from men she had deceived. The facade she once held up so boldly had finally crumbled. Perhaps, when there was no one left to help, they finally began to understand what their actions had meant. But I felt no sadness. Each of them had made their own choices. Each of them was now living with the outcome. And me. I no longer lived to meet anyone else's expectations. I had chosen to live my own life on my own terms. The moment the light turned green, my vision began to blur. At a crowded intersection, I gripped the steering wheel tightly as the world spun around me. Cars sped past, their horns blending into a distant roar. My heart pounded violently in my chest. Something was terribly wrong. I can't be late for the Peterson Project meeting, I whispered to myself. The buildings of Boston's skyline seemed to dance and sway before my eyes. My hands weren't just trembling, they had lost all strength. On the most important day of my career, I was about to crash in the middle of rush hour. "Ma'am, are you okay?" A pedestrian called out through my half-open window. I tried to answer, but my mouth wouldn't move. The intersection tilted sharply, and suddenly I was staring at headlights barreling toward my drifting car. Voices exploded around me. "Call 911. Is she breathing? Somebody get her out of there." My assistant Kim's face appeared above me, her mascara already running down her cheeks. "Mandy, stay with me. The ambulance is on its way." I tried to reach for my phone, but my body wouldn't respond. Call my family. I managed to whisper before darkness swallowed me. When I regained consciousness hours later in the ICU, everything was hazy. I could feel someone next to me. My husband, Billy, had rushed to be by my side. His face was pale with exhaustion, and his dress shirt was wrinkled from the frantic trip. He must have left work the moment he heard about the accident. "Mandy, you're awake," he said, his voice a mix of relief and fear. "Are you in pain? I'll get the doctor." I tried to shake my head, but a bolt of pain shot through me. A neck brace restricted my movement, wires tangled around my body. An IV was in my left arm. My right leg was in a cast. "How long?" My voice was hoarse. 18 hours, Billy said, gently holding my hand. "You passed out at the intersection and drifted into oncoming traffic. Thankfully, the other driver slammed on the brakes in time. You avoided a direct hit, but your car flipped. Pieces of the memory returned. The trembling hands, the blurred vision, the headlights approaching. I remembered thinking about the Peterson Project meeting, how it was the most critical day of my career. The meeting. Don't worry. Kim presented in your place. The client completely understood. Nothing matters more than your health. Billy's eyes glistened with tears. He was trying to stay strong, but I could tell he knew how close I had come. Did you contact my family? I asked, my voice trembling. Billy's expression darkened. Yeah, there's something you should know. He chose his words carefully. The police reached out to your mother, he said, picking up my phone. Do you want to hear what they told me? I nodded, a flicker of hope warming my chest. They said your parents had just boarded a cruise with Stacy. Your mom apparently said, it's a relief to have the freeloader out of the way. I'm so sorry, honey. Billy's face said everything words couldn't. I turned away, hot tears spilling down my swollen cheeks. Is there anything I can do? He asked gently. A painful memory flashed in my mind. Last Thanksgiving, I wired $60,000 to pay off Stacy's student loans. Mom barely looked at me as she helped her open a new designer shoebox. Thanks, Mandy. You're literally the best sister ever. The best sister. The best daughter. The best ATM. Thank you, Billy. Bring me all the financial documents. Every single one. His face shifted into lawyer mode, and he nodded quietly. I nearly died today, and my family chose the cruise I paid for. My phone buzzed. An Instagram notification. Stacy had just posted a selfie on the cruise deck with my parents, all smiles. All three of them were holding up cocktail glasses. The caption read, "Dream vacation begins." So blessed to have a family that sacrifices everything for what really matters. #CruiseAlife. Grateful. Family first. I turned off my phone, feeling something hard and cold form in my chest. It wasn't from the injuries, it was pure resolve. Very soon, Billy would help me sever every financial tie I had with my family. And for the first time in my life, I wouldn't feel the slightest bit guilty about it. The next morning, Billy arrived with a leather briefcase stuffed with documents. You brought everything? He pulled a chair close to my bed and began arranging the paperwork on my tray table. everything you asked for. But are you sure you won't regret this? It's a decisive move. I was nearly killed by a car while they boarded a cruise I paid for. And they called me a freeloader. This is exactly what needs to happen. Billy nodded, his jaw tight. We'd been married for 3 years, and he had witnessed countless moments of my family's exploitation. Let's start with the mortgage payments. Despite the pain, we spent the next hour systematically going through every document. Okay, auto payments for your parents' mortgage canceled, Billy said, sorting the forms. Next is cutting off access to the account used to fund Stacy's lifestyle. The memories came flooding back. Do it, I said, my voice surprisingly firm. Cut everything. He pulled out another stack. And the payments for their house? Stop those immediately. They've been living in that house paid by you for 15 years. It's over. My phone buzzed. A text from my mother, the cruise is amazing. Stacy's having the time of her life. Are you feeling better? I handed the phone to Billy. He exhaled sharply. Wow. Just wow. He raised his brows. Are you planning to confront them directly? It's not a confrontation, it's a wake-up call. 15 years overdue. They've lived in a bubble of entitlement for far too long, I said firmly. Keep going, Billy. By noon, despite the searing pain, we had prepared everything needed to legally untangle my finances from my family's parasitic ties. All the paperwork is ready for submission, Billy said as he stood. But we could wait until tomorrow, give you a little more time to think it through. I shook my head firmly. Submit it today. I've had 36 years to think about this. A week after the accident, my parents and Stacy finally showed up at the hospital. But I refused to see them. I declined the visit entirely. From the hallway, I could hear my mother's voice, laced with performative concern. Nurse, we're here to see our daughter. Why can't we go in? The patient has requested no visitors, the nurse replied politely. This is ridiculous. Stacy's shrill voice cut through the air. We're family. Mandy hit her head, she's not thinking straight. Then came my father's voice. Our daughter is confused. We have a right to see her. Billy sat at my bedside, holding my hand. I know you can hear them. But this is your choice, and I support it, he said gently. I closed my eyes. Just a week ago, I was still fulfilling their every financial demand. Everything I had done for family had, in truth, enabled their entitlement and turned me into nothing more than a human ATM. Mandy. My mother's voice rang through the door. We just got back from the cruise. We were so worried we came as fast as we could. That was a lie. I'd seen their Instagram stories. They had enjoyed the cruise to the very end, just as planned. While I lay in the ICU on the brink of death, they sipped cocktails by the pool and dined at luxury restaurants. Mandy, I know you can hear me. Stacy's voice now carried frustration. Stop acting like a child. We're family. You need us. I smiled quietly. Ironically, it wasn't them I needed, it was my wallet they'd always needed. For 36 years, I hadn't seen it. Or maybe I had, I just didn't want to admit it. The voices in the hallway faded, step by step, into the distance. Security must have escorted them out of the hospital. Was that really the right call? Billy asked, concern in his voice. Absolutely. For the first time, I meant it with all my heart. It had been 2 months since I cut off all contact with my parents and sister. Dr. Lee was amazed by my recovery. To be honest, based on the initial diagnosis, I expected at least 6 months of hospitalization. But your resilience has been remarkable. The results from physical therapy are outstanding. I could now walk without crutches. I still had occasional headaches and bouts of dizziness, but nothing that interfered with my daily life. More than anything, I felt mentally sharper than I had in years. Can you keep my discharge confidential? I asked Dr. Lee. Of course. Patient privacy is strictly protected. We won't notify your family. Billy came to pick me up. As I climbed into the car, I glanced back at the hospital. The past 2 months there had been the most pivotal of my life. A time to reevaluate my relationship with my family and reclaim my autonomy. While driving, Billy updated me on the legal progress. All financial ties have been officially severed. They have no access to your accounts, and they can't apply for anything in your name. I exhaled with relief. Perfect. But no regrets? Not a single one, I said confidently. For the first time, I feel like I'm living my life. When we arrived home, a beautiful bouquet was waiting by the front door. Billy had arranged it. Inside, the house was spotless, and the calming scent of lavender, my favorite, hung in the air. Welcome home, he said, wrapping his arms around me. Your real life starts now. That night, I slept peacefully for the first time in ages. For the first time, I felt the joy of spending time solely for myself, free from the constant demands and guilt imposed by my family. The next morning, Billy sat beside me, reviewing documents. Foreclosure notices on their mortgage have started going out, he said. What do you want to do about their calls? Nothing. Let them experience reality for once. My hand trembled slightly as I signed the final document. The following day, I received multiple voicemails from my parents. As Billy prepared dinner, I played them on speaker. Mandy, the bank just called about the mortgage. Stacy's at work and we can't reach her. This must be a mistake. Call us back right away. My mother's voice was high-pitched, frantic. I answered coldly. I'm just a freeloader, remember? I wouldn't know. And I hung up. Moments later, Billy's phone rang. His expression turned serious as he listened. That was someone from my office, he said after hanging up. Stacy is trying to file for temporary conservatorship over you. What is she doing? She's claiming your accident caused a traumatic brain injury and that your irrational decisions prove you're unfit to manage your finances. Despite my still healing ribs, I laughed. Let me guess, she's offering to manage my money for me. Exactly. Don't worry, it's completely ridiculous. No judge would ever. Push back, I interrupted. Aggressively, make it expensive. And Billy, I want a countersuit for harassment. My phone rang again. This time, it was my father. Mandy, your mother told me about the bank situation. Seems like there was a mix-up. Stacy's been so busy, maybe she forgot the payment. Could you take care of it instead? Why me? I asked flatly. Well, Stacy's got a big promotion coming up. She's swamped. You're off work right now, right? You have the time. I took a deep breath. They still thought Stacy was the family breadwinner and I was the unemployed, dependent one. That's not my concern anymore. Not your concern? Mandy, you're still part of this family. You know how much Stacy has done for all of us. His words stirred old memories. In the beginning, it had been the two of us, Stacy and me, supporting our parents. Back when she had just started working and I was still a junior analyst, we split the mortgage together. At some point, Stacy had started lying to our parents, telling them she'd climbed the corporate ladder and was now making a high salary. Dad, who do you think's been paying the mortgage all these years? Stacy, of course. She landed that job at the big ad agency, then moved into management. You know how successful she's been. I smiled quietly. Stacy's actual income was less than 1/100th of mine. Did you know she's now preparing to file a lawsuit? A lawsuit? What are you talking about? She's trying to become my legal guardian. She wants control over my assets. There was a long silence on the other end. Well, maybe she's just worried about your health. My health? I've made a full recovery. I stopped sending money by choice. Sending money? You were sending money? That can't be. Stacy's the one supporting the household. Dad, face reality. I've been paying your mortgage for 15 years. Not Stacy, me. That can't be right, he said, his voice unsteady. You never really held down a serious. What do you mean by serious? Do you even know how much I earn? After a long pause, he said in a small voice. You work at some consulting firm, right? Maybe 1,000 a month? I took a deep breath. That was when I was 22. You never cared to ask, so I never bothered to brag. But now, I make $400,000 a year, Dad. I'm a senior vice president at an investment bank. The line went dead. Billy gently placed a hand on my shoulder. That truth probably hit harder than anything else, he said. 15 years of lies unraveled in one conversation. I shrugged. But now, they'll finally have to face the truth. That night, I slept soundly. No more playing along with anyone's lies. The next day, Billy came home with a tense expression. We've got a situation. Stacy's lawyer contacted me. What now? She wants to withdraw her guardianship petition. And she asked for a family meeting with your parents. I frowned. Why the sudden change? Apparently your dad confronted her after your call last night, asked her about your real income. That evening, my parents and Stacy showed up at our house. At first, I refused to see them, but Billy gently said they deserved to hear the truth. The living room was thick with tension. My mother's eyes were swollen from crying, my father looked ghost pale, and Stacy sat with her head down, hands clenched tightly in her lap. Let's hear it, my father said heavily. Stacy, is what Mandy said yesterday true? Stacy nodded faintly, still not meeting his eyes. Say it out loud, my mother demanded. It's true, Stacy whispered, her voice trembling. My sister, Mandy's been paying the mortgage this whole time. For 15 years? My father sounded stunned. Yes, 15 years. Then what about all those promotions? Your stories about becoming a manager? Stacy buried her face in her hands. All lies. I've only ever had part-time jobs. My annual income is maybe $3,500. My mother stood up, staggering slightly. Then, yes, I can barely afford spending money for myself. Mandy's been covering everything. There's no way I could have supported the family. I said nothing. I just sat and watched the web of lies begin to collapse. Then, my father's voice quivered. Mandy's income really is $400,000 a year, Stacy said, lifting her tear-streaked face. She's a vice president at an investment bank. $400,000? My mother sank into her chair. That's... Mom, I said, speaking for the first time. The total I've sent you over the years far exceeds that annual salary. A heavy silence fell over the room. Why? My father turned to Stacy. Why would you lie like that? Stacy began to sob. I was jealous. Mandy could do everything right. She had a great job. She was successful. I could never measure up. So you made me the villain? I asked, my voice calm. Yes, Stacy shouted, lifting her tear-streaked face. I hated how everyone praised you as the accomplished daughter. So I painted you as some pathetic sister who depended on me. You were the one who called me a freeloader too? That too, yes. I wanted Mom and Dad to look down on you. I didn't want them to recognize your worth. My mother's voice trembled. Stacy, you. I know, I'm awful. Stacy stood up, voice cracking. But I was drowning in inferiority. Mandy's smart, beautiful, makes real money. And me? I've just been bouncing between part-time jobs. So you thought that gave you the right to lie, deceive our parents, and tear me down? My voice was ice. I'm sorry. Stacy dropped to her knees. I'm truly sorry. But now that the truth's out, you're only sorry because you got caught. I stood up. Because I had a near-fatal accident. Because you filed for guardianship, and all your lies came to light? Stacy had no reply. My father buried his head in his hands. 36 years, what was I even looking at? Dad, Mom, I said, meeting their eyes. You're complicit. You believe Stacy's lies because you wanted to. You looked down on me because it was easier than facing the truth. That's not fair. My mother started, but I cut her off. What did you say on that cruise? It's a relief to have the freeloader gone, right? That's how you really felt. The room fell silent again. Mandy, Stacy said weakly. Is there any chance that you could forgive me? I shook my head. No, in those 15 years, you took my family, my self-worth, and the truth from me. I'm no saint, I don't forgive that. But we're sisters. Blood doesn't mean anything. You've been my enemy for 15 years. I looked at Billy. He nodded and stood. I think it's time for everyone to leave, he said firmly but politely. Mandy has been through enough. Please stop hurting her. The three of them walked out, each step heavy. When the door shut, I let out a long breath. How do you feel? Billy asked. Free? For the first time, I smiled from my soul. The truth is finally out. I won't be dragged down by their lies ever again. That night, for the first time in 15 years, I slept in peace, truly free from the prison called family. In the following weeks, the calls, emails, and letters from my parents came constantly. Bouquets appeared at my doorstep, and tearful letters filled the mailbox. My mother's letter read, "Dear Mandy, we made a terrible, unforgivable mistake. Calling you a freeloader, taking your devotion for granted, we are deeply sorry. Even though Stacy misled us, we were the ones who hurt you. Please give us another chance." My father's letter, "My daughter, in 36 years of being your father, I've never felt so ashamed. While you lay suffering in a hospital bed, we enjoyed a cruise paid for with your money. I forgot my gratitude. I misjudged your worth. Can you forgive this old fool?" Billy looked at me. "Aren't you going to read them?" "I don't need to." I dropped the letters straight into the trash. For 15 years, I sacrificed myself chasing their love and approval. But now, I don't even need their apology. People make mistakes. Billy began, but I interrupted him. If it were just a mistake, then why was their first concern after my accident not my safety, but their cruise itinerary? Why did they say, "It's a relief the freeloader is gone"? That's not a mistake. That's who they are. I stared out the window. Love is shown through actions, not words. For 15 years, they chose to use me. Now, I choose to honor myself. 6 months had passed since I cut ties with my family. Then, unexpectedly, Billy's friend Wesley, a local newspaper journalist, shared some surprising news. "It's about your family," he said, sipping his coffee. "They've become quite the topic around the neighborhood lately." "What kind of topic?" I replied, feigning disinterest. "The house was foreclosed. It went up for auction last month." Billy looked shocked. "Foreclosed?" "Yeah, apparently they were 6 months behind on the mortgage. Neighbors said Stacy was desperately trying to negotiate with the bank." I listened, emotionless. It was exactly what I'd expected. "And there's more," Wesley continued. "Your dad was laid off, got let go from the construction company at 55. He's having a tough time finding work, says his back pain makes manual labor impossible now." Billy glanced at me. I didn't react. "Your mom is struggling too. She started working part-time, but with no steady income from your dad, they're barely making it. Stacy wasn't doing well either." "By the way, what exactly does your sister do?" Wesley asked. "She's a part-time worker." "Why?" "Someone I know said she came in for a full-time job interview, but the resume was a mess. They couldn't hire her." "What was wrong with it?" "She left most of her work history blank, but wrote management experience and advanced computer skills. When asked to explain, she couldn't answer anything. And get this, she demanded a $3,000 monthly salary. When they told her it wasn't feasible for an inexperienced applicant, she snapped." I gave a faint smile. Stacy still hadn't come to terms with reality. A month later, Billy came home wearing a concerned look. "Your dad had an accident at a job site." "An accident?" "He fractured his leg. It was a day labor gig, so no insurance, and now he's out of work with no income." I looked out the window again. I felt nothing. Doctor says he'll be in a cast for 2 months. That night, right on cue, Stacy left a voicemail. Mandy, please? We only need $1,000 for Dad's treatment. I didn't answer. You're not going to help? Billy asked. For 15 years they used me. When I nearly died in that crash, they chose a cruise. They called me a freeloader and dismissed me. Now it's my turn to choose. You don't regret it? He asked gently. Not at all, I replied calmly. They didn't treat me like family, so I won't treat them like family either. That's all there is to it. I kept moving forward, walking a new path. Freed from the chains of blood, I was living a life of true freedom. Whatever suffering they endured now, it was the result of their own choices. That was when I first felt true liberation. I decided to turn my experience into a blog. My new mission, to share the message that family isn't defined by blood, but by choice. To help others going through the same struggle. Are you really starting a blog? Billy asked as he watched me type on my laptop. Yes, maybe what I've been through can help someone else. I titled it, Chosen Family Chronicles, Breaking Free from Toxic Blood Ties. In my first post I wrote, I used to believe the word family meant love. But blood isn't a license for exploitation. True family are those who value, support, and respect you. DNA has nothing to do with it. The post went viral almost instantly. The comments overflowed with messages from people who'd been through the same pain. I've paid off my parents' debts for 20 years. I cried reading this. I've been used by my siblings for years. This gave me strength. I finally let go of the guilt for saying no to my family. I updated the blog daily. Topics like how to set healthy boundaries, how to spot financial manipulation from family, how to protect yourself without guilt. 6 months later, I was offered a book deal. Speaking invitations flooded in. My story was changing lives. You've really changed, Billy said. You seem happier than I've ever seen you. The old me lived to meet others' expectations. Now, I live for myself. One night, I looked at an old photo of my parents. I felt no guilt, no sadness. Just the realization that they were merely one chapter in my story. Any regrets? Billy asked. None. This is the family I've chosen. I hugged him tightly. A family bound by love, not obligation. Today, my blog reaches over 1 million monthly readers. And with every thank you message I receive, I'm reminded. Leaving my family wasn't an end. It was the beginning of the life I was always meant to live. You're not worth the gas money. Either die quickly or recover soon. We have our own lives to live. That's what my mother said to me while I was in the hospital, recovering from saving my 10-year-old nephew from a car accident. My parents never visited me, not even once. On the phone, my nephew said, "I'm not lonely without you." I stared at the phone in shock before quietly ending the call. I'm Lindsay, 34. For years, I've supported my mother, Hillary, and my father, Douglas, financially. They've been raising my 10-year-old nephew, Kevin, together with my younger sister, who moved back in after her divorce. When I started helping them out, Kevin was just 4. I built him a treehouse, taught him how to swim, and was a devoted aunt in every way. My relationship with my parents wasn't ideal, but I believed we were doing okay. We had routines. We had traditions. We had a tangled but familiar rhythm. All of that changed 45 days ago. Kevin and I were crossing the street when a car ran a red light. I shoved him out of the way. I didn't have time to save myself. My leg was shattered. 3 ribs were broken. The doctors told me later I was lucky to be alive. 4 weeks passed in the hospital. Still, my parents didn't visit. My husband Ryan came nearly every day bringing homemade meals and updates from home. One afternoon, just before leaving, he paused and asked if I wanted to talk to my parents. About what? I asked. His face said everything. About how their daughter has been in the hospital for 28 days and they haven't shown up once. Ryan finally said. Something in me cracked. I asked him to check the joint account I shared with my parents. Call it intuition, or maybe just a long overdue awakening. As it turned out, Ryan had already started looking into our finances while I'd been hospitalized. He tried to pay some bills and logged into the account. That's when he noticed a strange pattern of transactions. "Lindsay, I think something's off," he said softly in my hospital room one day. "There've been some big withdrawals from the account you share with your parents." He pulled out his phone and showed me several suspicious transactions. The withdrawals had started just a few days after I was hospitalized. I thought maybe it was for an emergency or something. He trailed off. 2 days later, he brought my laptop and helped me access the records myself. He leaned in, eyes narrowed. "Lindsay, this is..." He didn't finish the sentence. The screen showed a detailed list of transactions made since I was hospitalized. My parents had been making weekly withdrawals, sometimes more. Dinner at luxury restaurants, shopping sprees, and most infuriating of all, a weekend resort trip, booked while I was still in critical condition. My blood pressure spiked so high, the monitors went off and a nurse came rushing in. Over $6,000 had been gone in the past month. Mostly ATM withdrawals, wire transfers to unknown accounts, and charges from a travel agency. "They've been saying they're broke for years," Ryan said through clenched teeth. "Even though you send them money every month." That night, I made the phone call that changed everything. My mother answered the phone, something she rarely did. I didn't mention the money. I just asked when she was planning to visit. "Well, the hospital's all the way across town," she said. I could hear chewing in the background. It was dinner time. Gas is really expensive right now. And, well, there are other things. "Other things?" I repeated. "I've been in the hospital, fighting for my life, and you haven't visited once." "Oh, don't be dramatic." She sighed. "You're not worth the gas money. Either die quickly or recover soon. We have our own lives to live." Her words cut through me like a blade. The pain of hearing your own mother tell you to either hurry up and die. All the years of love and support I'd poured into them crushed with one brutal sentence. Then Kevin got on the phone. He'd apparently been listening the whole time. "I'm not lonely without you," he said in a small, trembling voice. Like he'd rehearsed the line. I hung up without another word. I couldn't speak. I just lay there, staring at the ceiling, feeling my chest burn with betrayal. The next 2 weeks passed in a haze of physical therapy, doctor consults, and silent planning. And during that time, I checked the bank account every single day. More withdrawals, more mysterious expenses. Tickets to Disney World appeared. On the 45th day of my hospitalization, I finally signed my discharge papers. Ryan came to pick me up in his SUV, folding down the back seat so I could keep my leg elevated. As we pulled away from the hospital, he asked the question I'd known was coming. "Are you sure you don't want to tell your parents you're being discharged?" I thought about the stolen money, the Disney trip, and the years I had supported people who couldn't spare even an hour to visit their daughter fighting for her life. "I have a plan to carry out," I said. Ryan glanced at me, then focused back on the road. I felt the corner of my mouth twitch upward. "I'm going to give them exactly what they deserve, nothing more, nothing less." The apartment felt both too big and suffocating after the hospital. There were no nurses checking vitals every hour. No machines humming, just me, my racing thoughts, and a leg that throbbed with every heartbeat. The next morning, Ryan made breakfast sandwiches and fresh coffee. As I watched him scroll through his phone, his expression suddenly shifted. "I'm not sure if I should show you this," he said hesitantly. Without a word, I took the phone from him. It was my mother's Instagram page. The most recent post, just 2 days old, showed them at the Disney resort, all smiling with costumed characters. My sister stood next to them, grinning broadly behind her sunglasses. The caption read, "Family trip, blissful moments, luxury weekend." Another post showed them at a fine dining restaurant. Another, a boomerang clip of Kevin on a spinning ride. One had the caption, "Well-earned rest after all the hardship." While I was fighting to walk again, they were on vacation funded by my bank account. But instead of sending an angry message, I opened the Notes app and started drafting a strategy list. Consult an attorney. Inventory all assets. Track the missing funds. Open a new bank account. Reclaim ownership of my home. Since I couldn't drive yet, Ryan helped me find a lawyer who could come to us. Courtney, the attorney, arrived the next day in a casual blazer, carrying a leather portfolio. Her first question was simple. "Do you want to reclaim the property, or are you considering selling it?" Honestly, I hadn't thought that far ahead. But the answer came without hesitation. "I'm taking it back," I said. "I'm taking it back no matter what." We spent 3 hours going over everything. The house I legally owned, where I had let my parents live rent-free. Financial records showing I paid the mortgage. The joint account I had set up to help them. Courtney shook her head in disbelief more than once, documenting it all on her tablet. "They never visited once?" she asked, lifting her eyes from her notes. "Not once in 45 days?" She looked genuinely stunned. "And they traveled while you were still in the hospital?" I showed her the bank statements, the credit card records, and the screenshots Ryan had taken of their restaurant check-ins on social media. "This is where we stand," Courtney finally explained. "As the legal owner of the home, you're entitled to reclaim possession. But here's the catch we need clear: documented evidence before they start trying to hide assets." A week later, Courtney returned with formal paperwork. "This is an eviction notice. They have 30 days to vacate," she said. As expected, The response from my parents was combative. My father sent an email. "Stop this nonsense. We haven't done anything wrong. We didn't visit because we couldn't afford to, you know that. Be reasonable and call us." My mother's message was more hostile. "What's the point of all this? Are you really going to return your back on your family? Shame on you." Despite their words, they took no action. They ignored the notice, clearly waiting for me to back down. More messages from my parents followed. "This is our home. We're not leaving. You can't scare us. You're still recovering. What can you even do?" I didn't respond to any of their messages. Then Ryan brought me even more shocking news. He had been monitoring their social media accounts. "They're planning another trip," he said, holding out the screen. In a private message, my sister had tagged a friend and written, "Heading to the Bahamas with my parents next month. Kevin's coming too. Lindsay's still in the hospital, so she has no idea." Ryan and I exchanged a look. "This is our chance," I said. And that was the beginning of what we called Operation Empty House. Lying in bed, I stared at the ceiling, mapping out every possible contingency. My parents still thought I was in the hospital. They had no idea I had discovered the truth. That gave me a tactical advantage I wasn't about to waste. A few days later, I texted my parents and sister saying my doctors were extending my stay, and that reception was spotty, but I'd call when I could. My mother replied with a single thumbs up emoji. Not a word of concern, just noted. They were carrying on, as if the eviction notice had never existed. A month passed. Nothing changed. They seemed blissfully excited about their upcoming trip. Ryan tracked their itinerary through social media. They were set to depart Friday morning and return Sunday night. That gave us 2 full days. Call Courtney. I made up my mind. This needs to be done by the book. Courtney coordinated everything with the local sheriff. "This is a lawful property recovery and execution of eviction," she explained. "As long as you're the legal owner, you are fully within your rights." Saturday morning, we moved. The sheriff arrived with formal paperwork. A professional moving company followed my instructions precisely. Every piece of furniture, every appliance, every personal item registered under my name was removed and relocated to my new apartment or a storage unit. And then Sunday evening, the family stood frozen, as if they'd seen a ghost. Exhausted from their flight back from the Bahamas, they opened the door only to find nothing inside. I had hidden a few small security cameras inside the house. Discreet ones inside the smoke detector in the entryway, atop the bookshelf in the living room, inside the kitchen clock. Ryan and I watched the live feed from our tablet on the couch. Douglas walked in first. He was smiling, tanned, and dragging a large suitcase behind him. The moment he stepped inside, his face froze. The suitcase thudded to the floor. He stood there, stunned, captured perfectly by the camera. "Hillary," he called out, his voice trembling. "Hillary, get in here now." My mother stepped in next. At first she thought it was a joke. "Douglas, what is this?" she said with a nervous laugh. But that laugh quickly twisted into panic. "Where's our stuff? The furniture? The TV?" My sister and Kevin followed. Kevin clung to her arm in confusion. My sister stood with her mouth agape, slowly turning in place to take in the empty living room. Douglas, red-faced with fury, began storming through the house. "We've been robbed. Someone broke in." He punched a wall hard. The camera shook from the impact. Hillary pulled out her phone and started dialing 911. "Someone's broken into our home and taken everything," she said, her voice cracking. "Yes, everything. Furniture, clothes, electronics gone." My sister leaned against the doorframe in disbelief the entire time. Then she finally muttered, clear enough for the microphone to pick up. "This was Lindsay." I knew something was off. That eviction notice. This is payback for not visiting her. Their reactions only escalated. Hillary started screaming. Douglas punched another wall, this time hard enough to leave a hole. My sister sat down on the floor, head in her hands. The only calm one was Kevin. He stood quietly by the window, watching the street outside. When the police arrived, they were shown the official documents. The eviction had been executed under the supervision of a sheriff, authorized by the rightful owner. The officers explained it was a civil matter, not a criminal one. Douglas's expression, caught on camera, was indescribable. Anger, shock, and above all recognition. For years they had leeched off my goodwill, treated my generosity as entitlement. Now, everything they had taken for granted was gone. She made us homeless. Hillary screamed at the officer. "Our daughter. What kind of person does that to her own family?" The officer replied calmly. "The house is under her name. All your belongings have been safely stored. Please contact her attorney for further details." What struck me most was this. Not once did any of them say, "We're sorry for what we did to Lindsay." Every complaint, every outburst was entirely about themselves. What they had lost. How inconvenienced they were. Their selfishness was finally on full display. After watching the footage, Ryan took my hand. "Are you okay?" he asked gently. I took a deep breath. "I am." This was necessary. That night, I received dozens of calls and furious messages from my parents and sister. I didn't respond to any of them. Instead, I sent them a formal statement drafted by Courtney. It outlined their next steps strictly in legal terms. They were finally being made to face the consequences of their choices. And I, after years of emotional abuse and financial exploitation, was finally free. The next day, I went to court and filed for a restraining order. 2 weeks after the order was granted, Courtney called. "Lindsay, your family is requesting legal mediation," she said carefully. "They want to sit down and talk." I inhaled slowly. "It's entirely up to you whether or not to attend the mediation," Courtney said. "You're under no obligation." After discussing it with Ryan, I agreed to a final meeting. Under very specific conditions. It would be held at Courtney's office, a neutral and secure location. And Ryan would be present the entire time. On the day of the meeting, we arrived early. Courtney made coffee and tried to ease my nerves. "Remember," she said, holding my hand, "you've done nothing wrong. Everything you've done is legal and justified." As I sat down, I heard the heavy door open behind me. They had arrived. Douglas no longer carried his usual air of authority. His shoulders sagged, and dark circles shadowed his eyes. Hillary wore no designer clothes, just a plain blouse and jeans. My sister had swollen eyes and kept nervously rubbing a small locket with Kevin's picture inside. "Please have a seat," Courtney said evenly. They all looked at me as they took their chairs. The air in the room felt thick with tension. "Before we begin," Courtney continued, "this is a mediation session. Any threats or insults will immediately end the meeting." Douglas spoke first. "Lindsay, why?" His voice cracked with a mix of anger and confusion. "Why would you do this to your own family?" I exhaled slowly. "Why?" My voice trembled, but I held it steady. "When I was fighting for my life in the hospital, you didn't come. Not once. Instead, you took my money and went on a vacation." "That's wrong," Hillary snapped. "We just what?" I cut her off. "I went through every bank statement. While I was unconscious, you withdrew over $6,000 from my account. You went to fancy restaurants, booked a resort. Everything I provided for you, you treated like it was owed to you." My sister interjected. "You were always the rich one. Aren't we allowed a little luxury?" Ryan spoke, barely keeping his voice calm. "Luxury? Lindsay gave you over $10,000 a year. Mortgage, utilities, groceries, Kevin's tuition, everything." "And so what?" Hillary snapped. "That's what families do." "Family?" I said softly. "Family takes care of each other. Family doesn't tell you to die or get better quickly when you're in a hospital bed." The room fell silent. Douglas visibly paled. "Hillary, did you say that?" He turned to Hillary. Hillary was at a loss for words. You don't understand." "What is it I don't understand?" I pressed. "That you've been using me for years? That you treated my kindness like it was your entitlement? That you went to Disney while I was fighting for my life after a car accident?" Douglas covered his face with both hands. "We were just hoping you'd recover." "Don't lie." I slammed my hand on the table. "I saw all your social media posts. I know exactly what you were doing." My sister started crying. "But now we have nothing. Kevin, he won't grow up in a stable home." "That's not my fault," I said firmly. "This is the result of your own actions." Courtney stepped in. "May I share Lindsay's proposal?" I nodded. "Lindsay has exercised her right to reclaim her property," Courtney began. "However, all of your personal belongings have been safely stored and arrangements can be made for you to retrieve them. Additionally, Kevin's education and living expenses will continue to be covered through a third-party agency. There will be no direct contact." "That's it?" Douglas looked stunned. "What about the house? The support?" "It's over," I said quietly. "You're adults. You'll have to rebuild your lives on your own." Suddenly, Hillary stood and began walking toward me. "You're abandoning your family? Your parents? Your sister? Your nephew?" Ryan stepped in front of me. "Don't take another step." Hillary stopped and looked me straight in the eyes. "When did you become so cold?" I gave a soft laugh. "Cold? I risked my life to save Kevin. And what did I get in return?" a message telling me to die or get better quickly. Then photos of your vacation. When did you become so cold? This meeting is now concluded, Courtney announced. Lindsay's terms are final. Kevin will continue to receive support. Assistance for the adults has ended. The restraining order remains in effect. As we turned to leave, my sister grabbed my arm. Lindsay, she sobbed. I looked at her. Kevin didn't do anything wrong. I said gently. I still love him, and I hope he grows up to walk a better path. But you made your choices. Then I turned toward the door. Ryan took my hand, and we walked out together. When I glanced back, the three of them stood frozen, stunned. That was the final moment in a long history of abuse and betrayal. Outside, the spring sun welcomed us. I took a deep breath, and for the first time in years, I felt something lift from my chest. Freedom. Are you okay? Ryan asked gently. Yeah, I said with a smile. I think I will be now. After that day, my parents' and sisters' lives changed dramatically. The apartment they managed to rent was nothing like the spacious house they'd once lived in. The walls were stained with dampness. The pipes groaned. Cold air slipped in through cracks in the windows. Douglas finally got a night shift job at a local warehouse. But his pay couldn't come close to supporting the lifestyle they used to enjoy. His pride had been crushed, and most nights he fell asleep drunk. Hillary took a job as a cashier at the local supermarket, the same store where she once looked down on the staff. Now she stood in a uniform for hours, her feet aching, her hands rough from harsh cleaning agents. Deep lines were carved across her face. It's all her fault, she would often mutter bitterly. My sister bounced from job to job. A waitress at a bar, a call center rep, a janitor. She worked late into the night and returned home to fights with our parents. Christmas came, but the luxurious decorations and mountain of presents were gone. A cheap plastic tree and a few modest gifts stood in their place. Kevin smiled and thanked them anyway. But the adults' faces were shadowed with defeat. One night, Kevin called me in secret. I'll never forget that you saved me, Kevin said, his voice trembling with tears. When you were in the hospital, I knew what everyone was doing. When I said I'm not lonely, a mom made me say that. The truth is, I missed you every single day. I never blamed you, I said gently. I know, he whispered. And I know you're still helping us. I always knew it was you. We talked for a long time. Kevin shared what life was really like at home. The constant fights between his grandparents, the financial stress, the pressure they put on him to be the hope of the family. I gave him my apartment address. If anything ever happens, you can always call me. Anytime. After that, Kevin began visiting me quietly, once a month, sometimes twice. I cherished every moment of those visits. Meanwhile, my parents' and sisters' lives continued to unravel. Credit card bills piled up. Rent was always late. This isn't how it was supposed to be, Hillary would cry in the dark. We were meant to live better than this. Douglas began blaming himself. I should have worked harder, saved more. But the one thing they never said, the thing that mattered most, was, I'm sorry. Their pride was too deep, their denial too ingrained to admit the truth. They had brought this on themselves. Only Kevin moved forward. With my quiet support and guidance, he focused on his studies, joined extracurriculars, and started dreaming of a future. 2 years have passed. My leg has mostly healed. I walk with only a slight limp now. The doctors are still amazed by my recovery. And then came the most joyful news: Ryan and I are expecting a baby. As my belly grows, the bitterness of the past fades. My heart is full of something new: life, family, hope. I will never forget what my parents and sister did. But I also won't live shackled to hatred. The due date is near. Soon our daughter will be here. And I plan to raise her in a home filled with love, truth, and above all, mutual respect. Because that is what a real family should be. And now I finally believe we're building one. The invitation to Michelle's graduation party arrived at the end of spring. It came in a cream-colored envelope, embossed with gold lettering, and the name of a prestigious hotel. It felt like a symbol of her success. To be honest, my heart skipped a beat. On the day of the party, I chose the most elegant dress I owned. I curled my hair a little more carefully than usual, added a soft touch of glamour to my makeup, and stood in front of the mirror. When Katie smiled and said, "Mom, you look beautiful," I almost cried. The venue was even more luxurious than I'd imagined. A grand banquet hall decorated in white and gold, elegant music flowing through the air. It was like something out of a movie. At the reception, I gave my name. The woman at the desk checked the guest list, tilted her head slightly, and said, "I'm sorry, but I don't see your name." I showed her the envelope. "This is my invitation." She took it hesitantly and started checking again when a voice called out behind me. "Jessica? What are you doing here?" I turned to see my sister and mother standing there. My sister looked visibly shocked, while my mother wouldn't even meet my eyes and grimaced. "What do you mean?" "I was invited to Michelle's graduation party, so I came." "That can't be right, there must be some mistake." "Your name wasn't on the family list. This isn't your place anymore." My mother's voice was low but clear. It was almost absurd, like a cruel joke. "I'm family, aren't I?" I said quietly. Michelle gave a dry smile. "Your job is done. There's nothing more we need from you." "What do you mean by that?" I asked. She didn't even flinch. "I mean you're no longer needed. This isn't your place anymore." I felt my heart pounding, my fingers going cold. I struggled to keep my mind from going blank. "How can you say that? Everything I've done up until now was just something to check off a list?" It was then that my mother, standing beside me, muttered under her breath, "You've always been out of your depth, Jessica." She still wouldn't look at me. Her lips just kept moving. "What's a lunch lady doing at a gathering of doctors? You were meant to stay behind the scenes for us. Coming out here like this, it's laughable." I couldn't say a word. My throat tightened and closed soundlessly. In my hands was the gift Katie and I had picked out together. I clutched it so tightly my hands were shaking. "Please just go home. That cheap dress is embarrassing." At those words, it felt like the whole room fell silent. I could feel every gaze on me. To them, Michelle, my mother, I wasn't family, I was an outsider. "Security, please escort this woman out. She's not supposed to be here." At Michelle's words, a man in a black suit approached. "Ma'am, I'm sorry, but..." It felt like a dream. My feet wouldn't move. Everything I just heard didn't feel real, and my mind echoed with a hollow silence. Not even tears came. But deep inside, something cold and heavy had sunk into my chest. "I understand." The words finally came out too calm, too devoid of feeling to sound like my own voice. I quietly turned away. I didn't lift my eyes. I didn't even straighten my back. I just started walking, so slowly I couldn't even hear my own footsteps. The weight of their eyes pierced my back, but I couldn't bring myself to look up. I focused only on leaving the hall, without saying a word. Even outside, my heart felt no lighter. I couldn't bring myself to go straight home. Instead, I wandered into the hotel lobby and sat in a corner of the lounge. The cushion beneath me swallowed my weight, but my mind was still spinning with the words I'd just heard. "Your job is done. You don't belong here. Out of your depth." My fingers trembled as they gripped my phone. Inside me, quiet yet searing, anger and grief began to churn. The feelings I had buried for so long were slowly, unmistakably changing something within me. Looking back, I think it all began that day. The day I decided to support Michelle's dream. My name is Jessica Lawrence. I wake up at 4:30 every morning to work in the cafeteria of a public elementary school. It's not glamorous work, but the children say that was yummy. Makes it all worthwhile. One day, my mother told me, "Michelle wants to become a doctor." Michelle is my younger sister, 10 years younger, actually, and when I moved out, she was still just a little girl in elementary school. She was always a dreamy, cautious girl. So when she declared she wanted to study medicine, I felt proud. But reality was harsh. My mother sighed, "Not with my income. It's impossible." I sat in silence on the phone, staring at my cold coffee. I wanted that girl to chase a dream I never could. "I'll pay the tuition," I heard myself say. Though I worked full-time, my husband Nicholas ran a real estate company, and we relied heavily on his income. We weren't wealthy, but we were comfortable. So I decided to pay Michelle's tuition $8,000 a year. I didn't ask for anything in return. Watching Michelle pursue her dream of becoming a doctor was enough for me. About 6 months into her college life, she called me one day. "It's hard to get by on scholarships alone." Michelle's voice sounded uncertain, almost anxious, and I believed her without a second thought. I just assumed medical school was more expensive than I'd imagined: utilities, groceries, transportation, textbooks. And with such a demanding program, she probably didn't have time to work a part-time job. Thinking it might give her peace of mind, I started sending her living expenses. At first, it was about $300 a month. But it gradually increased until I was transferring over $1,000 to her every month. I never said a word. In some way, I think I took comfort in being someone she could rely on. But the moment I realized it had all been an act, something inside me shattered. It happened during a break at work when a coworker was scrolling through social media. "Isn't this your sister?" she asked, turning her phone toward me. On the screen was Michelle, wearing a glamorous cocktail dress, smiling at a luxurious city restaurant. On the table were shopping bags that looked like designer brands, and the captions read things like "treating myself today" and "nothing like a resort to unwind." I froze. As I scrolled further, I saw poolside resorts, spa treatments, high-end fashion, an endless stream of luxury. There was no sign of financial struggle. In fact, she seemed to be living far more lavishly and freely than I was. While claiming to be struggling, Michelle had been living like this all along. The money I had saved by skipping things for my own child Katie's clothes, little indulgences, had gone to fund Michelle's lifestyle. And that thought made my skin crawl. But the final blow came on Katie's birthday. When she turned 7, I threw a small party at home. We invited her friends, baked a homemade cake, and decorated the house in bright colors. It was supposed to be a happy family day. The only reason I thought to invite Michelle was because I wanted to see the look of joy on Katie's face. But Michelle brushed it off. "I've got a medical conference that day. I really can't miss it." I believed her and told Katie, "It's okay, she's just really busy." Katie looked a little disappointed, but still managed a small smile, as if trying to reassure me instead. But a few days later, I opened social media without thinking and froze. There was Michelle, smiling on a beach with a glass of champagne in her hand. The photo was tagged with things like weekend vibes and well-deserved. She took a selfie with the ocean behind her, full of confidence. In that moment, the phone in my hand felt unbearably heavy. Just a few days earlier, Michelle had told me she was too busy with a medical conference to come to the birthday party I planned for my daughter. But the truth was completely different. She hadn't gone to any conference, she was partying at a beach resort with her friends. That realization pierced through me. All the emotions I had suppressed suddenly erupted. Despite all I'd done paying tuition, sending money, she'd never once said thank you from the heart. But worse than that, what I couldn't forgive, was her complete disregard for Katie. Even if she couldn't come, a simple apology, a message, anything would have meant something. Instead, she told a lie and went off to a resort without a word or a gift for the niece who had been looking forward to seeing her. That betrayal hurt the most. And even then, was I supposed to stay silent? To Michelle, I was just an ATM. A bottomless source of money she could tap into guilt-free, whenever she wanted. Someone she could betray without hesitation. That night, I couldn't sleep. In the quiet of our bedroom, I lay staring at the ceiling, listening to my husband and daughter breathing beside me, realizing that everything I had believed in was a lie. It was a kind of loss I couldn't even put into words. But beneath that loss, a new emotion stirred. I had never asked for anything, not even gratitude. Michelle's success had been my pride. But should I remain silent, even when basic respect had been trampled on? As I asked myself that, the words came quietly, "It's over." I was surprised at how calm I felt. It was like waking up from a long sleep. I'm Katie's mother. I'm Nicholas's wife. And more than anything, I'm a person with my own life. I wasn't born to be someone else's sacrifice. My time, my feelings, my life, they are not just resources for others to use. I've done more than enough. And that's why I decided. It's time to show them the truth and hold them accountable. This wasn't about revenge. It wasn't about lashing out in anger. To me, this was just a reckoning. a long overdue settling of the roles and feelings that had been blurred and ignored for years. I glanced at the clock on the lounge wall. 7:52 p.m. The party would still be going. I imagined Michelle and my mother proudly accepting congratulations, as if I'd never existed. I took a small breath and whispered to myself, "It's time to tell the truth." Quietly, but with conviction. I stood up and walked back toward the ballroom. After exiting the elevator, I pushed open the golden doors once again. Inside, a speech was in progress. A man I assumed to be Michelle's advisor was on stage, praising her as a future leader in the field of medicine. Michelle stood beside him, calm and composed. She looked like a completely different person from the one who had coldly said to me, "Your role is over." I approached the MC and spoke softly. "May I say a few words? Just for a couple of minutes." He looked startled, but I didn't miss the faint flicker of understanding in his expression. As the microphone was handed to me, a ripple of whispers spread through the hall. But I wasn't afraid. I walked calmly to the stage, stood beneath the spotlight, and faced the crowd. "Good evening. I'm Jessica, Michelle's older sister. I came here today to celebrate her achievements." My tone was ordinary, almost warm. I could feel the tension in the room ease slightly. "I know many of you are proud of Michelle. I was one of those people, too. But there are things you deserve to know." I chose my words carefully. Michelle's tuition, $8,000 a year, was more than our mother could afford. So I paid it. Every year. The room fell silent. She told me scholarships weren't enough to live on, so I sent money every month. But the truth is, that money was spent on resort vacations and designer goods. Michelle tried to shout something from the back, but my voice through the mic overpowered hers. "I'm married, I have a child, and even so, we cut back on our own lives to support her. I didn't just cover her tuition, I took over the mortgage on our family home, too. Without me, she wouldn't have had the life she enjoys now." I scanned the crowd. Their faces were a mix of shock and disbelief. Michelle's cheeks were burning red. My mother had gone pale. Still, I never asked for anything in return. Because we were family. Because I wanted her to live her dream. My voice faltered for a brief moment. But I continued. "And yet today, my sister and mother told me, your role is over. You don't belong here." They had me thrown out of the venue. The room held its breath. I wanted this day to be a celebration of her success. But now I'm claiming it as the day I take back my own life. Before stepping off the stage, I added one last thing. If standing here makes me out of place, then so be it. But the one who truly needs to reconsider their place isn't me. I handed the microphone back to the MC. I didn't wait for applause. I wasn't looking for praise. I simply left the truth behind and walked away. Outside the hotel, I felt a strange lightness in my chest. As if I had finally laid down a burden I'd been carrying for years. That night, when I got home, Katie greeted me sleepily. "Welcome back, Mommy." At her voice, I finally let myself cry. After she was asleep, I sat in the living room with Nicholas. And I finally spoke. "Today they told me my job is done." He frowned. "What does that mean?" I told him everything that had happened at the party. He listened silently until I finished, then sighed deeply. I've been worried that you were giving too much, that you were breaking yourself to hold them up. I shook my head. When Michelle got into med school, there was no money. I was the only one who could pay, so I thought it was just what I had to do. But I wrapped my hands around the cold mug in front of me. After everything I've done, why did they say that to me? What did I do wrong? He gently placed his hand over mine. You didn't do anything wrong. You were taken advantage of because you're kind. Because you thought being family meant you had to carry it all. But now it's okay to draw the line. His words sank into me. I knew I had to change. Just throwing emotions at them wouldn't fix anything. What I needed was action. Something real. The next day, I told Nicholas, I'm going to take formal action about the house. I'll talk to a lawyer and start the eviction process. He simply nodded and held my hand. I've seen everything, Jessica. It's time to close the chapter properly. For the first time, his words made me feel something I hadn't in years. The comfort of knowing I wasn't alone. That weekend, I visited a lawyer's office. Calmly, methodically, I submitted all the financial records, mortgage paperwork, and legal documentation confirming my ownership and usage rights. After carefully listening, the attorney nodded. Legally, the property is in your name. You have full rights to request that your family vacate the premises. We'll begin with a certified notice. If they don't comply, we'll proceed with legal eviction. On my way home, I paused and stepped into the old bakery I used to visit as a teenager. Back when I was the one cooking and cleaning in that house, this little shop had been my only escape. The warm scent of butter and freshly baked bread felt like a quiet whisper from the past. You did well. A few days later, the certified letter was delivered. The response came quickly. From the other end of the line came my mother's furious voice. What are you thinking? Telling us to move out now. We've lived in that house for years. I replied in a steady voice. Do you remember who's been paying the mortgage since Dad passed? That house is in my name. I've carried that responsibility all this time. But not anymore. There's been no gratitude, no respect. I have no reason to keep holding on to this relationship. So you're just abandoning your family? I thought family meant mutual support, not one person endlessly sacrificing. I'm not a puppet whose only purpose is to hold others up. It's time I start protecting myself. I paused for a moment, then added quietly. And besides, didn't you say my role was over? If that's true, then maybe Michelle can help you now. She is a successful doctor, after all, isn't she? A few seconds of silence, then the call cut off without a word. A week later, my lawyer informed me, if the house isn't vacated by the deadline, we'll file for a formal eviction. I didn't hesitate. I was done letting emotions dictate my decisions. I didn't want a dramatic courtroom battle. I moved forward, calmly, step by step, grounded in facts. I chose to close the chapter not with feelings, but with action and evidence after years of being led by emotion. And on the day of the eviction deadline, I returned to the house. It was empty. With the eviction process complete and the legal dispute over the house title finally settled, peace, true, rightful peace, had at last returned to my life. But not peacefully so. In the spaces left behind, memories crept in. regrets whispered. But I didn't want to stop. I wanted those years I spent supporting others, those years I was made to feel worthless, to mean something. I didn't want to end as the sister who was used. I wanted to rewrite that story. It was then, back at the school kitchen, that I overheard a conversation between two coworkers. My son's doing okay in school, but college? I don't know, tuition is just out of reach. It was Gina, the always smiling woman I worked with. Even with scholarships, it barely covers anything. We only have one child and still, it's terrifying. Another woman replied, I just wish kids who work hard had a real chance. Their words froze me in place, ladle in hand. That night, I began writing in a notebook thoughts, ideas, needs. Kids who can't afford tuition because of their home situations. Children with potential, no matter where they come from. Those quietly working hard without anyone noticing. As I wrote, I realized this wasn't about Michelle. It was about me, the girl I used to be. And that's how the idea for the Jessica Lawrence Education Support Fund was born. Launching it as an official nonprofit required funding, paperwork, but I had support now. Nicholas helped with the legal logistics and offered me part of his real estate office as our starting space. It was a quiet, sunlit room, and it became the foundation of something new. One day, as we worked on filing, our legal advisor said, Jessica, your experiences, they're not scars. They're your strength. Support that comes from lived reality, that's what resonates. Those words lifted me. I was no longer waiting to be helped. I had become someone who gave help. 6 months after the foundation launched, we held our first scholarship ceremony. We selected 3 students from the local public high school. All came from difficult backgrounds. All had strong grades and dreams they could speak clearly and confidently. Their families were invited to the event. One mother cried as she repeated, thank you so much." I gently placed a hand on her shoulder. "It's okay, your child has potential. And I've always believed in that." On the way home, Katie grabbed my hand tightly. "Mom, you were so cool today. When I grow up, I want to be just like you." Those words made me finally begin to feel proud of the path I had chosen. Then one day, a bundle of letters arrived at the office. "Thanks to you, I got into college. Without the scholarship, I wouldn't have made it. Truly, thank you. Now I want to be someone who helps others too." Each letter was filled with trembling gratitude. The handwriting was clumsy but honest, heartfelt. I held them to my chest and closed my eyes. I never started this hoping to be repaid. And yet, knowing that my choices had brought light into someone else's life filled me with quiet joy. Even after being shattered by the words of Michelle and my mother, I was glad I chose to rise. I had walked forward, trusting myself, and now I knew, without doubt, that it had been the right path. After Michelle and my mother moved out, I never learned where they went. Rumors said Michelle had struggled with the brutal reality of medical training and eventually dropped out. Now I heard she was working nights just to get by. My mother, rather than offering support, reportedly scolded her, harshly blaming her for being weak, until the two of them finally went their separate ways. But even when I heard those stories, I felt nothing. Their current lives were simply the result of the choices they had made. Once we may have been family, But now, no matter what path they walk, it will never again intersect with mine. Because my life, it had finally begun to move forward. In a sunlit park, Nicholas and Katie laughed together. Seated on a bench, I watched the trees swaying gently in the breeze and listened to the sound of their voices. Katie ran through the grass, light as spring itself, and just watching her filled my heart. Somewhere along the way, this peace had become my new normal. I no longer lived in fear of anyone. No longer at the mercy of someone else's needs. I spent each day not as someone's sacrifice, but as a woman walking in her own truth, with the family that truly mattered. Nicholas remained as kind as ever. He never spoke in grand declarations, but in his quiet gaze, I always saw understanding and faith in me. "I'm proud of you for finding your own path," he once told me. I'll never forget that night. Katie is 10 now. She chooses her days with her own will, laughs freely with her friends, reads books she loves, and speaks dreams aloud with shining eyes. She is the free, radiant girl I once only wished I could be. And in my heart, I knew cutting ties with my mother and sister had been the right decision. The work of our nonprofit had since spread beyond the state, and next year, a new scholarship program was set to launch. We were reaching more children, our staff were growing, and I was still learning every day. No matter how far we expanded, the core of my heart never wavered to believe in someone's future. That belief had become my life's purpose. Suddenly, Katie ran toward me with a bright smile. "Mom, look," she called, waving her little hand. I stood slowly and opened my arms wide. She ran straight into them, and I caught her with everything I had. "You did amazing," I whispered, holding her close. In my arms was everything I had fought so hard to protect, a future worth every breath. It would never be stolen from me again. Never trampled on. I was living now not alone, but surrounded by a family who saw me, in a community that truly needed me. I had learned to value bonds of the heart over those of blood. I am no longer just the lunch lady. I don't stop at supporting others, I move forward by empowering them. I am living my life. "What? Alicia, you weren't invited?" "Invited to what?" I asked back with a laugh. I thought it was some kind of joke. "Sophia's wedding is tomorrow. Everyone will be there. Your parents will also be there, of course." That was the moment I found out I wasn't invited to my own sister's wedding just one day before it took place. Suddenly, the music and laughter of the party felt like they were fading into the distance. I felt my heart sink heavily in my chest. "Sophia's wedding?" My aunt's face turned pale. "Oh no, don't tell me you really didn't know." "I really didn't. Tomorrow's the second Sunday, so I was going to Costco." I was so shocked that I couldn't form words. For the past 3 years, Aunt Miranda and I had a routine of going to Costco together. Every second Sunday of the month at 10 a.m., I would pick her up in my car, and we'd stock up on bulk groceries and household supplies. She didn't like driving. I run a furniture store and need commercial cleaners and paper towels. I always thought we had a mutually beneficial, good relationship. Just the day before the second Saturday of the month, her son, my cousin Jacob, had his 25th birthday party at a restaurant. It was a big event. I donated several $100s and even arrived early to help set things up. As the party got lively, I felt like I was sharing a warm moment as part of the family. I did think it was a little strange that my parents and sister weren't there, but I assumed they had other plans. Jacob thanked me sincerely, and I chatted pleasantly with other relatives. "Oh, Miranda?" I said casually, holding a glass of wine. What time should I pick you up for Costco tomorrow? Is 10 o'clock okay, like usual? Miranda's hand froze mid-air, still holding a champagne glass. Her expression shifted from confusion to realization in a matter of seconds. And that's when I learned that my one and only sister was getting married that day. Jacob, who was nearby, also noticed our conversation and turned around with a confused look. Alicia, you really didn't know? We've been planning this for 6 months. Sophia and your parents aren't here today because of the wedding tomorrow. I tried to make sense of it all. Not a single person in my family had mentioned the wedding to me in 6 months. In fact, I didn't even know Sophia was engaged. But why just me? Maybe they forgot to tell you. Miranda tried to explain in a flustered tone. Or maybe they didn't want to trouble you. You're always so busy with running your store and all. That excuse only made everything clearer. I wasn't part of the family. At least, not in their eyes. I looked around. All my relatives at the party clearly knew about the wedding. Uncle Elliot, cousin Nathan, even neighbors who were close to the family. Only I had been left out. Where is the venue? I asked as calmly as I could. The Rose Garden Banquet Hall, the one that has a beautiful garden. It's the place Sophia always dreamed of. The Rose Garden Banquet Hall. Coincidentally, it was a venue managed by my best friend, Camila. My family had to know that. I kept my smile and replied, yes, it's a lovely place. But inside, all the puzzle pieces were coming together into a terrifying picture. For the rest of the party, I behaved as if everything were normal. I said happy birthday to Jacob and continued with small talk with the other relatives. But deep inside, I felt as if I had finally found the answer to a question that had lingered for years. Was I truly part of this family? Or was I just a convenient presence they called upon when it suited them? Driving home, I reflected on my relationship with my family. Lately, I had been feeling a subtle discomfort in how my parents and sister treated me at gatherings. Conversations would taper off, and I was naturally placed at the edge in group photos. But I never imagined I would be excluded from my sister's wedding. I had planned to go to Costco, but there was no longer any reason for me to go. Aunt Miranda would be attending the wedding. Only I would be spending another Sunday alone, just like always. The next morning, I gathered my courage and called my parents. I held a faint hope that maybe Aunt Miranda had been mistaken. Good morning, Mom. I heard from Aunt Miranda yesterday. Is Sophia's wedding really happening today? There was a clear moment of troubled silence on the other end. Ah, Alicia, yes it is. But don't worry. It's just a small wedding. You don't need to come. Not, we forgot to invite you. Just you don't need to come. It was as if I were too busy to attend. But I didn't even know Sophia was engaged. When did you start planning this? About 6 months ago, I think. It all came together suddenly. The timing worked best for him. I called my mother twice a week. Not once had she mentioned the wedding. Why didn't you tell me? My mother's voice grew smaller. It's really a small ceremony, just family. And you're always busy with your store and everything. Am I not family? Is Dad there? Can I talk to him? My father came on the line. His voice was cheerful as always, but somehow it sounded fake. Alicia, good morning. What's going on? I just heard about Sophia's wedding. Why didn't you tell me? He sighed lightly. It's a very small wedding. You've been so busy, and we didn't want to trouble you with it. But I'm her sister. Of course I'd want to attend her wedding. I get that, but, well, everything's already arranged. It's hard to change anything now. It was as if I were suddenly trying to barge in. You're always so busy. Running your store and all. We didn't want to add more stress for you. He made it obvious to me that it would have been a burden to them if I were to attend my sister's wedding. And then came the question that confirmed everything. By the way, who paid for the venue? It must have been expensive, right? There was a brief hesitation in my father's voice. Well, the whole family chipped in together. Even with the hospital expenses. Did the money I sent for your treatment cover those costs? Well, actually, I didn't end up needing the treatment. Then what happened to that money? It was used for the wedding. I felt my blood run cold. The $7,000 I had sent for my father's supposed hospitalization had funded the very wedding I was excluded from. So you used my money to throw a wedding I wasn't even invited to. Alicia, don't say it like that. We're family. Now suddenly the word family was convenient to use. I ended the call. There was nothing more I needed to hear. Everything became clear. After hanging up, I checked my call history with trembling hands. Calls from my father. Emails from my mother. Bank transfer confirmations. They were all proof of a lie. I remembered what had happened 6 months ago. My father had called me one weekday evening in a panic. Alicia, I had some tests done at the hospital. They say I need surgery right away. But I don't have enough for the hospital fees. His voice was frail. He sounded genuinely unwell. I didn't doubt him for a second. How much do you need? About $7,000. I hate to ask, but could you help me out? Without hesitation, I transferred the money the next day. I thought nothing was more important than my father's health. I called several times feeling worried. He eventually told me the surgery went well. I'm fine now. A few weeks later, he picked up the phone again, sounding cheerful and healthy as ever. I had been surprised by how quickly he recovered, but I was relieved. Looking back now, that was when the shift in my family began. They became distant on the phone. At gatherings, I noticed they treated me with subtle detachment. I imagined how that $7,000 was spent. The venue for Sophia's wedding, her dress, the food, the flowers. A beautiful wedding made possible with my money, and I had no place in it. What hurt more was knowing everyone in the family had known. My mother, and most likely Sophia too, must have known the wedding was being funded with my money. Yet none of them questioned why I wasn't invited. They happily planned a celebration I was excluded from. They moved forward, never once informing me, while enjoying their time together. What I felt wasn't anger, it was deep, overwhelming sadness. The people I had always believed were my family, they had seen me as nothing more than an ATM. They came to me when they needed something. And once they got it, they conveniently forgot about me. That was all I had been to them. But at the same time, I felt a strange sense of relief. I wasn't truly part of the family. If that's the case, then I don't have to keep pretending anymore. I stood up and made myself a cup of coffee. It was Sunday. Normally, I would have headed to Costco with Aunt Miranda. But she was at the wedding, which was funded by the money I had sent. The wedding I wasn't invited to. It was ironic. But it was that irony that gave me the resolve to make my next move. After a while, I picked up my phone and called Camila. Camila had been my best friend since college. After graduation, she inherited the Rose Garden banquet hall from her parents and had been running it beautifully ever since. Camila? It's Alicia. Alicia, it's been a while. What's going on? I just need to check something. There's a wedding scheduled at the Rose Garden today, right? Yes, at 2 p.m. The bride, would her name happen to be Sophia Winters? That's right. She's your sister, isn't she? Aren't you coming? I was planning to stop by the hall, too. I was looking forward to seeing you again. I gave a wry smile. Actually, I wasn't invited. I could hear Camila gasp on the other end of the line. What? What do you mean? I explained briefly what had happened from the previous night through the morning. How I found out at my cousin's birthday party, the phone call with my parents, the fake hospitalization, and them misusing my money. Unbelievable. Camila's voice was full of anger. To use your money for a wedding and not even invite you, that's unforgivable. Camila, I need a favor. Anything. Can you cancel the wedding today? There was a long pause. Alicia, that's a big risk from a business standpoint. But Camila's voice grew firm. Friendship matters more. What reason should I give? Just say there was an emergency with the facility. Plumbing issues or something. I'll cover the refund myself. Don't worry about the refund. This is my decision. Thank you, Camila. Now we're even. Even? They treated me like an ATM. Now it's my turn to show them reality. Camila was quiet for a moment, then said, Okay, but what will you do after that? It's going to cause a huge scene. That's their problem. I'm done cleaning up after this family. After I hung up, I felt truly free for the first time. Until now, I had always put my family first, always putting my own feelings second. But that ends today. Around 1 p.m., my phone began to ring. The first call was from Sophia. Alicia, there's some kind of trouble at the venue. Have you heard anything from Camila? I answered calmly. What are you talking about? I haven't heard a thing. They said there's a plumbing issue, and we can't use the hall today. What are we supposed to do? That sounds awful. But there's nothing I can do. Next was my mother. Alicia, please, is there anything you can do? Can you ask Camila to help us? Why should I ask her? I wasn't invited, remember? And then, my father. Alicia, please, we're family. Help us. Family? I answered coldly. If we were family, you would have invited me from the beginning. I ended the call and took a deep breath. This was the beginning of my new life. Around 3 p.m., I drove to the Rose Garden Banquet Hall. It wasn't out of curiosity, it felt more like a ritual to mark the end of who I used to be. The venue's parking lot was in complete chaos. The wedding, originally meant to take place in a beautiful garden, was now being held on an asphalt parking lot. Later, Camila told me that after denying them use of the venue, Sophia and my mother had begged her desperately. Could you at least let us use the parking lot? They pleaded. Out of her friendship with me and a sense of human decency, Camila had replied, Yes, you can use the parking lot, but no other facilities will be available. This was the result. In one corner of the lot stood a single white rental tent, set up in a hurry. Underneath it, mismatched folding chairs were placed haphazardly. Many chairs were uneven in height, some wobbled. The arch was a flimsy, collapsible type, with artificial flowers fluttering in the wind. Sophia wore a beautiful wedding dress, but its elegance only made the shabbiness of the setup more tragic. She was quietly sobbing at times, clutching the groom's hand. Adrian, the groom, looked bewildered, glancing around repeatedly. The guests' reactions were mixed. Older relatives wore sympathetic expressions, but some younger friends were giggling quietly. The guests on the groom's side looked clearly uncomfortable. I can't post this kind of wedding on social media. Never thought I'd attend a parking lot wedding. What happened with the bride's family? Their whispers echoed through the lot. Even the officiant seemed at a loss. The microphone was faulty, cutting out at random intervals. These two beloved souls, static, vow eternal love, buzzing sound. Sophia's veil was blown upward by the wind multiple times, and she had to keep catching it in a panic. During the ring exchange, the sound of a nearby car engine drowned out the officiant's voice. My mother was forcing a smile, but her eyes were filled with tears. My father kept his head down in shame, avoiding eye contact. What about the photos? The photographer looked helpless. The background was nothing but concrete walls and parked cars. Hardly the setting for a cherished wedding memory. I stepped out of my car and silently watched the scene. This was what had become of the dream wedding. That was supposed to be funded by my money. Jacob spotted me and came over. Alicia, this is just awful. It is, I replied calmly. But this is the outcome they chose. If they had invited you, this never would have happened. I smiled. But this entire scene shows exactly what I meant to them. Someone to rely on when they needed problem solved. Someone they could discard when no longer convenient. The wedding somehow proceeded to the end, but many of the guests were already trying to leave early. The groom's relatives and friends looked especially out of place. Congratulations. I approached Sophia and spoke quietly. She turned, her face flushed red with tears and rage, and glared at me. This is your fault. You ruined the most important day of my life. My fault. I responded calmly. I simply stepped back from a wedding I wasn't invited to. This is what the wedding looks like without me. Isn't this exactly what you wanted? People around us started to take notice of our conversation. Everyone. I raised my voice toward the guests. Thank you for taking the time to attend today. How are you enjoying this parking lot wedding? You see, this is what happened when the wedding was planned without me. A murmur ran through the crowd. I continued. I'm the bride's sister, yet I wasn't invited to this wedding. No one told me anything about it, even though it had been in the works for 6 months. I only found out by chance last night. The expressions of the guests began to shift. On top of that, the $7,000 I sent for my father's supposed hospitalization was used to pay for this wedding. So yes, this is a wedding, paid for with my money, that I wasn't even invited to. Silence fell over the venue. And this morning, I explained the situation to my friend who owns this venue, and she declined to allow its use. That's why this ceremony is happening in the parking lot. Sophia shouted. Stop it. But I ignored her and continued. Until now, I've always been the one to solve the family's problems. But I finally understand they needed me only as a problem solver, not as family. I looked at Adrian, the groom. Congratulations, Adrian. But please remember what happened here today. This is the nature of the family you're marrying into. I turned on my heel and started walking away. Behind me, I heard Sophia's sobs and the confused murmurs of the guests. But I didn't look back. As I left the parking lot, I looked over my shoulder one last time. There they were, my family, standing in shock on the asphalt. Scattered folding chairs. Cheap decorations fluttering in the wind. This was my family without me. And without ever looking back again, I walked away. Since the wedding, I've cut off all contact with my family. For the first few days, they sent angry calls and messages. I ignored them all. After a week, they stopped reaching out. A month after the chaotic wedding, I learned the truth by coincidence. On my way home from work, I ran into Aunt Juliet, my mother's sister, at a cafe in the neighborhood. She had always been relatively neutral in the family, and my relationship with her wasn't bad. Alicia, how have you been? Juliet sounded a bit awkward as she greeted me. We had coffee together, chatting about safe, surface-level topics. But as the conversation went on, her expression grew heavy. Alicia, I think you have a right to know. Her tone turned serious. Have you heard the real reason behind the wedding situation? I shook my head. They just said it was a small ceremony. Juliet sighed deeply. That was just the official excuse. The truth is, your mother and Sophia decided on it together. Decided what? They came up with a reason not to invite you. In reality, there were over 70 guests. It was by no means a small wedding. My chest tightened. But why? Juliet hesitated, then continued. Sophia said, if Alicia's there, everyone will flock to her. I'll be overshadowed. What would I even do for that to happen? That was the problem. You could do anything. Juliet's voice grew quieter. Sophia has always had complicated feelings toward you. Whenever something happened in the family, everyone naturally turned to you for help, didn't they? I thought back. It was true, helping to arrange my relatives to move, accompanying our elderly grandmother to the hospital, planning family trips, mediating disputes. I had gradually become the go-to person. When Sophia was born, she naturally became the center of attention. She was cheerful, sociable, always making people laugh. But in serious moments, everyone turned to you. But she was always the popular one. Being popular and being trusted aren't the same thing. Juliet spoke with sadness. Sophia could be the center of fun, but no one came to her for serious advice. Everyone thought, talking to Sophia won't solve anything. My chest ached. Juliet went on. The same thing happened during the wedding planning. At first, Sophia tried to take charge, but soon your mother said, "Let's ask Alicia." Venue selection, budget management, guest list arrangements. But I didn't even. That made it worse. Sophia overheard your mother saying, "Alicia could fix this in 5 minutes," while she was struggling. I was stunned. I only wanted to help my family. They couldn't see that. To Sophia, your capability only highlighted her own shortcomings. She wanted to be the center of her own wedding. But with you there, it would have been, "Of course Alicia handled it," or "Thank goodness Alicia's here." And Mom agreed with that? Juliet nodded. Your mother carried her own complicated feelings too. As a mother, she wanted to love both daughters equally, but she always ended up relying on you. When Sophia cried, "I'm your daughter too," she felt guilty. Did other people know? Most had a sense of it, but no one spoke up. Some might have even felt more relaxed without you. Because when you're around, their irresponsibility becomes too obvious. I stared at my coffee cup. The vague discomfort I'd felt for years was finally taking shape. So being trusted was a burden to the family? No. Juliet shook her head firmly. There are many who truly appreciate you. They just didn't have the courage to speak up. I stood. Thank you for telling me, Aunt Juliet, but it's too late. Alicia, maybe it's not too late to fix this. No. I smiled. This is better. I'm grateful to know the truth. I never did anything wrong. I'm simply free from people who see my strengths as flaws. As I left the cafe, I felt truly liberated for the first time. The mystery that had haunted me was solved, and I realized I had no reason to blame myself. My kindness and abilities should have been directed toward the right people. And now, I finally can do so. Instead of trying to fix past relationships, I began focusing on the relationships I truly value. First, I deepened my friendship with Camila. She fully supported my decision and said, "You did the right thing." We began spending more weekends together, holding private cooking classes at her venue, and trying out new wines. I also told my coworkers about what had happened. They told me, just because their family doesn't mean you have to forgive everything, and those words confirmed that my decision had been the right one. But while I was living peacefully, my family began to face the consequences. First, Sophia's marriage collapsed. Adrian had learned the truth at that wedding. He found out that Sophia had lied to him about having no sister, that the parking lot venue was no accident, and that they had lied to me to receive financial support. He simply couldn't forgive the lies. "Your family have deceived me," Adrian reportedly told Sophia. "Your sister is a wonderful person, yet you all painted her as the villain. I can't get married to someone like that." The divorce proceedings moved quickly, and Sophia ended up moving back into our parents' house. She tried to reach out to me, but I had blocked all methods of contact. Meanwhile, my parents were facing serious trouble too. News of the parking lot wedding spread quickly throughout the neighborhood and at my father's workplace. People were especially outraged that I had been tricked into giving money, only to be excluded from the wedding. They borrowed money from their daughter and didn't even invite her to the wedding? That family's messed up. Everyone knows how kind Alicia is. That's what it means to bite the hand that feeds you. Neighbors started to avoid my parents outright. The same happened at my father's workplace. Co-workers gave him cold looks, and talks of his promotion quietly disappeared. My mother, too, was effectively shut out from the local volunteer group she had belonged to for years. Why not ask your daughter for help if you're short on money? That snide remark was repeated often enough that my mother began to dread going outside. 6 months later, my parents couldn't take it anymore and decided to sell the house. They moved to a place where no one knew them. Letting go of a home they'd lived in for over 30 years was devastating both financially and emotionally. While packing for the move, my mother came to my workplace one last time. But I refused to see her. A coworker stepped in and told her, "Alicia is living her new life. Please let her be." Aunt Juliet continued to send me brief updates about the family. Between the lines, the despair was clear. Sophia got divorced and moved back home. Your parents are starting over in a new place. Everyone wants to apologize to you. After reading that letter, I quietly tucked it away in my desk drawer. I felt sympathy, but no regret. This was the result of their own choices. 1 year later, I moved from my small apartment into a house with a garden, chosen and paid for entirely by me, for me. At my housewarming party, Camila and several co-workers came to celebrate. It was a small gathering, but I could feel that everyone there was genuinely happy for me. "Alicia, you made the right choice," Camila told me. "Blood alone doesn't make a family. The people who truly care about you, they are your real family." That night, when I was alone, I stood by the window and looked out at the garden. The stars were shining beautifully. I asked myself if I regretted cutting ties with my family. The answer was clear. No, not at all. I had chosen myself, and it was the most right choice I had ever made in my life. It hurt to know my family was suffering, but it was a lesson they needed to learn. If you don't value the people in your life, you'll eventually lose more than you imagined. I have found true happiness with my new family friends I can truly trust, and that is enough. She should pay back every cent of that mortgage, then you should cut her off. I'd be ashamed to even call her family. My heart was full of hope as I reached for the doorknob of my parents' house, clutching the tickets for their dream trip to Europe. It had taken me months to save up enough money to give them the vacation they had longed for over the years. I imagined us celebrating their 50th anniversary together as a family, full of joy and gratitude. But just before I opened the door, I heard something that changed everything. "She's such a loser. It's embarrassing." It was unmistakably my sister Michelle's voice. I froze in place, holding my breath. I can't wait until she's done paying off the mortgage. The blood drained from my face. They were talking about me. 15 years of faithfully covering that mortgage every month. All to help my family, for my parents' retirement, for a future I believed we shared. Then I heard my mother, Rose, reply. "Everything's already in motion. Don't worry." My hands were trembling. I pulled out my phone and hit record. If I didn't capture this moment, they'd later say it was a misunderstanding. "She plays house with her little pretend job. She's pathetic, she can't succeed at anything." Michelle's mocking voice cut deep. To them, my career as a nurse and the senior care home I built from the ground up meant nothing. They saw it as just a small-time care center, always laughing behind my back, wondering when I'd find a real job. What had I been working for, sacrificing for, these 36 years? Just then, my 6-year-old son Lucas, who'd been waiting in the car, ran over, concern in his eyes. "Mom, are you okay? Your face is really pale." Looking into Lucas's innocent eyes, I made up my mind. I wouldn't expose him to this kind of toxic environment. "Lucas, let's go home," I said, forcing a smile. "But what about Grandma and Grandpa's party?" "We'll come back another day. Mommy's not feeling so well right now." Lucas nodded gently. "Okay, I get worried when you're not feeling good." As we walked back to the car, I stopped the recording. 5 minutes of audio, and within it, every ugly truth laid bare. They called me a loser. They were planning to cut me off as soon as the mortgage was paid. I would never hand over those Europe tickets. That envelope had held my love and sacrifice, and now it would never reach their hands. Driving home, tears welled up, but I forced them back for Lucas's sake. I glanced at him through the rearview mirror. His face was still full of innocence. I had to protect him, no matter what. During the 20-minute drive, something inside me began to shift. Love turned into disappointment. Disappointment turned into anger. And that anger slowly crystallized into a calm, unshakable resolve. 15 years ago, I was 23, juggling plans to launch my senior care facility when my father ran into trouble with his job and asked for help with the mortgage debt. $200,000 felt astronomical to me at the time. But I believed my business would eventually become profitable. That's when Michelle's husband, Nathan, a lawyer, offered legal advice. "If you're taking over the mortgage, you'll eventually own the house too. It's a good investment. I'll handle the legal paperwork." I was young and naive, driven by a sense of duty to my family. So I agreed. At just 23 years old, I took on the mortgage. For 15 years, while building my business, I made every payment month after month. Looking back, all their tears and words of gratitude, Nathan's offer to help. It had all been calculated. Performative. I had been used, manipulated for 15 years under the guise of family. The next night, I could never forget the shock I felt when I realized that my kindness and love for my family had been completely exploited. Still up? Nicholas, my husband, walked into the living room with a cup of coffee after Lucas had gone to bed. "You've been acting off since yesterday. What happened?" I hesitated. I hadn't told Nicholas yet. He genuinely loved my family, especially my father. They even went fishing together. Actually. And so I told him everything, the conversation I overheard during the anniversary visit. His face slowly hardened. "I can't believe this," he said after listening to the recording. "I've seen firsthand how much you've given up for them, how you've saved every penny to pay that mortgage." The next day, I decided to go back to the house. Nicholas objected. "It's dangerous, Alyssa, if they find out. But I need more evidence. The recording won't be enough." "Then I'm coming with you," he said firmly. "I'm not letting you go alone." Nicholas waited in the car. When I arrived at my parents' house, I wasn't surprised to find it empty. Using the spare key, I stepped inside and headed straight for my father's study. The recording I had made the night before might not be enough to hold up in court, and I needed more concrete evidence. While searching through some documents, I noticed my father's phone lying on the dining table. He must have left it behind. At first, I had no intention of touching it. I wasn't suspicious of him. I was mainly looking for legal or financial documents related to the family estate. But something about the phone made me hesitate. If he was really hiding something, maybe the truth was on that device. I knew the passcode. It was my mother's birthday. After 36 years in this family, I could practically predict my father's every move. The moment the screen unlocked, my world collapsed. At the top of the message list in his app, there was a name S. With trembling fingers, I opened it. An endless string of intimate messages appeared. I'm being careful not to let Rose find out. Just a little longer, and we can start our new life. Susan, you're the only one for me. The more I scrolled, the worse it got. Once Alyssa finishes paying off the mortgage in 3 years, we'll begin our new life together. Robert, are you really going to leave Rose? Of course. I only see a future with you. But Alyssa adores you. Don't worry. Michelle and Nathan will handle everything. I kept scrolling. The messages got more detailed and more disturbing. I won't tell Michelle about us. She just wants to make sure Alyssa is removed from the inheritance. What about Rose? She won't know a thing. Michelle will convince her. She's never liked Alyssa anyway. I could barely breathe. My mother had no idea about the affair and was unknowingly being manipulated by Michelle to go along with their scheme. I checked the messages between my father and Michelle next. Michelle, thank you for talking Mom into it. Dad, once Alyssa finishes paying off the mortgage, the estate really goes to me, right? I promise. As long as you keep Mom convinced, everything will be yours. She was worried about Alyssa, but I told her, don't worry, she makes enough money. Perfect. Alyssa doesn't suspect a thing. I couldn't stop shaking. My sister had deceived my mother just to claim the inheritance, and my father was using me to secure a future with his mistress. The first step was identifying the true identity of my father's mistress, S, so I started by checking the contact list at his workplace. Checking the staff directory of my father's company, I found her, Susan Miller. He was having an affair with a coworker. And that wasn't all. I discovered a legal consultation email between Michelle's husband Nathan and my father. Attached was a mortgage payoff schedule and a detailed plan to legally cut me out of the inheritance once the mortgage was paid off. They had planned every detail around the assumption that I would continue paying for 3 more years. After that, they would cut me out of the estate and transfer everything to Michelle. As if my father's affair wasn't shocking enough, what devastated me even more was discovering the cold, calculated plan that had mapped out every corner of my life. I quickly took photos of the evidence and saved as many of Susan's messages as I could. When I returned to the car, Nicholas took one look at my pale face and asked, "What happened?" I showed him the screenshots. His fists clenched. "Your dad's having an affair. And they're planning to push you out the moment the mortgage is paid off in 3 years? And Nathan's involved, he gave them legal advice." "This is unforgivable," Nicholas said, his voice shaking. "I respected your father. I thought he was a great grandpa for Lucas. If I hadn't found his phone, I would have never known." My voice was shaking. I never suspected him, not once. The next day, we visited a law office together. Nicholas never let go of my hand as we explained everything to attorney Jessica Irving. "This is a fascinating case," she said, reviewing the documents. "But if they're waiting for the mortgage to be paid off, we have an opportunity. We can use these next 3 years to gather even stronger evidence and prepare a solid legal strategy. 3 years? I was stunned. Alyssa, we could file now, but if we wait until the mortgage is paid off, the fraudulent intent becomes undeniable and your case will be far stronger. Nicholas spoke up. So, you're saying Alyssa has to keep paying the mortgage for 3 more years? Yes, it's a painful decision, but if your goal is full restitution, it's the best strategy. And during those years, I advise you limit contact with them as much as possible to avoid tipping them off or prompting them to destroy evidence. I took a long breath. 3 more years of pretending. 3 more years of keeping the truth hidden. But for Lucas's future and my own justice, I needed to finish what I started. All right. I had made up my mind. When the mortgage is fully paid off in 3 years, I'll settle everything once and for all. I stand with my wife completely, Nicholas declared without hesitation. I'll take care of all the expenses if needed. What Alyssa's been put through is inexcusable. As I signed the legal documents, I could feel just how deeply I relied on Nicholas's strength. Even if my own blood had betrayed me, my true family was right beside me. That night, after returning from the law office, Nicholas and I sat down to discuss the plan. How exactly do I create distance for 3 years without making them suspicious? I asked, anxiety creeping in. If you pull away too suddenly, they'll notice. So we'll give them natural reasons. In the first 6 months, I used the excuse of being overwhelmed with work at the care facility. Alyssa, you must be exhausted, my mother said over the phone. I made sure my voice sounded tired. I'm sorry, Mom. We're onboarding new residents, and I just can't get away. You're working that hard. Are you taking care of yourself? I am. But I'll have to miss the family dinner this Sunday. I've got to finish the paperwork. She sounded concerned. Don't push yourself too hard. Her kindness filled me with guilt. Even Michelle reached out. Alyssa, you've been super busy lately. Are you overdoing it? Thanks, Michelle. But I need to focus on getting the business on track. By the 8th month, I started using staff training system development as my reason to skip weekend gatherings, sometimes skipping nearly half of them. You can't make it again this Saturday? My father asked with a slight edge in his voice. It's great that you're so dedicated to work, but don't forget about your family. To me, that sounded hollow, hypocritical. I enrolled Lucas in more weekend activities and occasionally used not feeling well to bow out. Gradually, I stopped showing up almost entirely. Alyssa, will you be coming to Mom's birthday this year? Michelle asked. I'm really sorry, but we have an audit that week. I wish I could be there. Skipping my mother's birthday hurt more than I expected. But it was a sacrifice necessary for the plan to succeed. Then, 1 month before the mortgage was due to be paid off, I proposed a family celebration. A final moment together, framed as a joyful gathering. It'll be nice to finally sit down and talk, all of us, I said on the phone. My mother sounded thrilled. Yes, it really will. I smiled as I replied, silently saying goodbye in my heart. Later, Nicholas said to me, You kept it up for 3 whole years. Your acting skills are on par with a professional. It wasn't acting, I said, utterly drained. It was agony. I nearly drowned in guilt. And yet, the carefully constructed distance worked. They'd gotten used to my supposed independence and busyness. None of them suspected that I had been preparing for this moment all along. And now, the day of reckoning had arrived. 3 years of restraint and silence were finally about to bear fruit. On the morning of the family reunion, my hands trembled with nerves. On the surface, it was just a celebration of the mortgage being paid off. But in reality, it was a stage for calculated revenge. Over the past 3 years, I had worked with Jessica to gather evidence and build a legal case. Today was the culmination of it all. "You okay?" Nicholas asked gently, placing a hand on my shoulder. "You don't have to do this. I can go in your place." "No, this is something I need to do." I took a deep breath. If anything goes wrong, "I'll be there in 30 minutes, Nicholas promised. He held my hand firmly. "And I already told Lucas that you're heading to an important meeting. When you're done, let's take him somewhere nice for dinner, just the 3 of us." I arrived at my parents' house dressed in my most professional attire. A navy blue pantsuit, a string of pearls around my neck, and in my hand a tablet loaded with critical evidence. It wasn't the uniform of a caregiver. It was the armor of a woman ready for battle. "Alyssa." It's been so long, my mother greeted me with a smile, though I could see a hint of tension behind it. "Mom, Dad, Michelle, Nathan." I addressed each of them by name and bowed slightly. "Thank you for taking time out of your schedules to be here." My father glanced at the bag I was carrying. "You brought quite a bit with you." I smiled, just as Nicholas and I had rehearsed. "They're very important documents." We entered the dining room. Once seated in the dining room, I took the head of the table and connected my tablet to the large TV screen. A wave of confusion spread across my family's faces. "I have a special announcement to make," I said, rising and raising my glass. "For the past 3 years, I've been seeking the truth. And today I'd like to share what I've found." The first thing I played was the audio I had recorded during their 50th anniversary 3 years ago. Michelle's voice calling me a loser, my mother's agreement, the detailed plan to cut me out. Their voices echoed through the room, slicing through the silence. Now that the mortgage had been paid off just as they had planned, the significance of this recording was undeniable. This recording was made exactly 3 years ago. And as of today, it's been 1 week since the mortgage was fully paid off. I explained calmly. Michelle turned pale. "Alyssa, you've known all this time?" "Yes, I kept paying for 3 years, knowing everything on the advice of my attorney. But that was only the beginning." My father stood up. "So you've been lying to us for 3 years?" "No, you're the ones who lied." Then I projected screenshots, messages between him and Susan Miller. "For the past 3 years, I've been gathering evidence with legal counsel, letting your plan unfold exactly as you intended." The room turned ice cold. "Dad, would you care to explain your 13-year affair with Ms. Susan Miller?" The color drained from his face. "Oh, and by the way," I continued, "I've already spoken with Susan's husband. I thought he deserved the truth too." My mother stood abruptly and screamed at my father. "Robert, is this true? You've been cheating on me for over 10 years. Finally, I displayed the complete mortgage repayment records, 18 years worth. This is what I paid out of love for this family, I said firmly. Nathan began frantically typing on his phone. I looked directly at him. Nathan, all the legal documents you're trying to delete already backed up. Every piece of advice you gave to help exclude me from the inheritance is documented. The room descended into chaos. My mother threw a vase. Michelle burst into tears. My father stumbled over excuses. But it was too late. I quietly stood and turned toward the front door. As of today, our relationship is over. Just then, my father grabbed my wrist in a rage, and the door swung open. Let go of her. Nicholas's voice was low but thunderous. I had never seen that expression on his face before. Nicholas, my father muttered, visibly shaken. Father. No, Robert. Nicholas stopped calling him father. Don't touch my wife again. If you come any closer, I'll call the police. The energy in the room shifted instantly. Nicholas's presence silenced the storm. You were part of this conspiracy too? Robert stammered. Conspiracy? Nicholas scoffed. You have no idea what Alyssa went through these past 3 years. The stress, the heartbreak, the strength it took to make every payment. He stepped forward. We've been preparing for this moment for 3 years. Alyssa gave you every chance because she still loved her family. But you never changed your plan. He guided me toward the door. From now on, all communication goes through our attorney. He helped me into my coat. You did it, he whispered, wrapping me in a hug. You never have to look back. In the car, the tears finally came, exhaustion and relief crashing over me. Nicholas didn't say a word. He simply rubbed my back in silence. How do we explain this to Lucas? I asked through sobs. Let's tell him the truth in a way he can understand, Nicholas said gently. We don't need to lie. We'll tell him in words he can understand. He'll know his mom did the right thing. 1 week after the revelation, I was helping Lucas with his homework alongside Nicholas when my mother called in a panic. Alyssa. Her voice trembled. I've filed for divorce. I can't live under the same roof as your father for another day. I was stunned. I hadn't expected my mother to divorce my father. Honestly, I thought they'd end up blaming me and standing united as husband and wife. When I confronted him about Susan, he confessed everything, she said. 13 years, Alyssa. 13 years I was a fool. You were paying off the entire mortgage while he was spending his money on that woman. I could hear her crying on the other end of the line. 50 years of marriage, shattered overnight. But Mom, I said, my voice conflicted. You agreed to the plan to cut me out of the family, didn't you? After a long silence, she answered softly. Michelle pressured me into it. I didn't truly understand the weight of your sacrifices. I'm so sorry, Alyssa. But my mind was already made up. Mom, I've decided to cut ties with the family completely. I'm done putting myself at risk of being used or betrayed. After I hung up, Nicholas looked at me with concern. What happened with your mom? I explained, and his expression turned complex. To be honest, I'm surprised. I really thought they'd turn on you and stick together. So did I. After that, my mother started calling more frequently. Apologies, loneliness, financial worries, She brought them all to me. One night, after yet another long call, Nicholas said gently, "Alyssa, you're not obligated to be your mother's emotional support. But she's all alone now. That's the result of her choices," he said firmly but kindly. "You've carried your family's emotional weight for 39 years. It's time to prioritize yourself and our family." 2 months later, on the day of the court hearing, Nicholas took the day off to go with me. Thanks to Jessica Irving's strategic legal work, my father's financial abuse and fraudulent behavior were formally recognized. I hereby order the defendants to pay 80% of the total mortgage amount as damages to the plaintiff. The moment the judgment was read, my knees nearly gave out from relief. Nicholas held me steady. It wasn't full recovery, but it was validation. 15 years of struggle finally acknowledged. As we exited the courthouse, Michelle came rushing down the hallway toward me. "Alyssa, we're still sisters, aren't we?" Nicholas immediately stepped in front of me. "Michelle, there is a restraining order. If you get any closer, we'll call the police." "Nicholas, even you, but we're family." "Family isn't defined by blood," he said quietly. "Family is a relationship built on love and respect. You gave that up." That night, I used part of the compensation to open a college fund for Lucas. The rest went into expanding the care facility. It was my first true step forward, leaving the past behind and building something for the future. 18 years of hard work finally paid off, Nicholas said, holding my hand. "I couldn't have done this without you," I replied, full of gratitude. "If I had been alone, I would have given up halfway." "You were never alone. You have us." His words gave me a quiet confidence. This truly was the beginning of a new life. A year after the verdict, our life had grown richer than I could have imagined. We expanded the care facility, added 3 new staff members, and received heartfelt thanks from the residents. Rewards more valuable than any amount of money. "Alyssa, you made the right call," Nicholas said, lounging on the new sofa we'd just bought. "You've changed so much over this past year. You've got your real smile back." And he was right. I felt lighter, like I had finally been released from heavy chains. No more mortgage payments. No more emotional manipulation. I was truly free. We hadn't heard a word from my parents' side since. Then one crisp autumn afternoon, I received a call from my cousin, Ben. "Alyssa, there's something I think you should know about your parents." My heart skipped a beat. "Is something wrong?" "It's about Aunt Rose," he said cautiously. "You know the divorce is final, right? Well, she's living alone now. A 1-bedroom apartment in downtown." "I see," I replied, unsure of what to feel. "It's rough. Word is she's struggling financially and had to take a part-time job at a grocery store. Works 5 days a week from 6 a.m. to 2 p.m. There was genuine sympathy in his voice. The image of my mother working early shifts at a convenience store squeezed my chest. "I see her sometimes at family events, but she looks older," Ben continued. "She usually just sits quietly by herself. And sometimes she murmurs things like, 'If only Alyssa were here.'" Nicholas watched me quietly, concern written across his face. "Robert's situation is even worse," Ben said, his tone growing heavier. "You've heard that things with Susan are completely over, right? She took a new job out of state. She did? Her husband filed for divorce, and during the proceedings he demanded compensation from your dad. I think it was about $15,000 for 10 years of infidelity. I caught my breath. And $15,000 was no small amount for my father. Plus there's the $70,000 he owes you in damages, right? On top of legal fees, it's a lot. He's in serious financial trouble. Ben hesitated, then added, "The big house is too much for him alone, and the maintenance costs are draining him. I heard he's thinking about selling it. But after repaying your investment share, he won't have much left." A few weeks later, Nicholas got a call from an old college friend who worked at the law firm where Nathan Michelle's husband was employed. Things are falling apart in Nathan's household. He's lost a lot of respect in the legal field after everything with your sister-in-law. Clients see him as someone who enabled financial abuse. His reputation is shot. Nicholas probed for more details. Apparently, even within the firm, he's been sidelined. His salary was cut, and since Michelle never worked, they're struggling financially. School costs, daily expenses, it's catching up with them. There's even talk he's been drinking more from the stress. The friend continued. Michelle's been trying to find part-time work, but after years as a stay-at-home mom, it's not easy. They argue constantly. One of their neighbors heard Nathan screaming, "Your family destroyed my career." But by then, all of it felt like something from a past life, distant, irrelevant. "You're a strong woman, Alyssa," Nicholas said after the call, gently taking my hand. I squeezed his hand back. "We're a real family now, aren't we?" "Mom, where are we going for the next holiday?" Lucas, now 10, appeared from his room having just finished his homework. Every month, we planned a small family trip together. Seaside towns, mountain cabins, historic cities, wherever we went, it was always the three of us. And that made it special. "This time you get to pick," I said, running my fingers through his hair. "Then, the dinosaur museum." Lucas's eyes lit up with excitement. It was such a simple exchange, yet deeply precious. There was a time when my mind was always preoccupied with my parents and their endless demands. Now, my focus was fully on the family right in front of me, Nicholas and Lucas. This past year had taught me something invaluable. Family isn't about blood. It's about mutual love, trust, and support. This is my family. Nicholas, Lucas, and me. And that's more than enough.